We all know that life can be a journey filled with challenges, but some are born into a world where every step is guided by something greater. Imagine being born under the shadow of a sacred mountain, where the very air you breathe carries the wisdom of the gods. In today's video, we'll talk about what it's like to live as a devotee of Lord Shiva, starting with a childhood spent beneath the towering presence of Mount Kailash. So let's not waste any time, and let's begin. In a tranquil village nestled beneath the towering peaks of the Himalayas, where the air is thin and filled with the scent of pine and sacred incense, a child is born. This village, untouched by the rush of modern life, lies in the shadow of Mount Kailash, the sacred abode of Lord Shiva, the source of all creation and destruction. The mountain's snow-capped summit rises majestically above the world, its silent presence a constant reminder of the divine energy that flows through every living being. The child's birth is not just an ordinary event. It is an offering to Shiva, a moment imbued with profound spiritual significance. From the very beginning, this child is blessed by the presence of Lord Shiva. The parents, devout followers of Shiva, offer their newborn to the mountain, the heart of their faith. The family's home, simple yet filled with sacred symbols, becomes a small temple in its own right. Incense is lit. The sound of soft chants fills the air, and offerings are made with reverence. The child is cradled in the warmth of spiritual devotion, destined to walk the path of enlightenment. As the child grows, stories of Lord Shiva's incredible power and wisdom are passed down like treasured heirlooms. The tales of Shiva's cosmic dance, his divine form as Nataraja, his deep meditation in the Himalayas, and his fearsome yet compassionate nature fill the air during the long evenings. The child listens intently, their heart drawn to the power of these stories, sensing that their own journey, though yet untold, is tied to the great mysteries of the divine. The village, while small, is rich in spiritual life. Every day the child sees their elders practice devotion, whether it is the chanting of mantras by the sacred river, the offering of flowers at the village temple, or the solemnity of meditation at dawn. The sound of bells, the rhythm of conch shells, and the soft hum of prayer create an atmosphere of peace and sacredness that infuses everything. In this environment, the child feels Lord Shiva's blessings surrounding them, like an invisible hand gently guiding them on a path they are only beginning to understand. Their parents, ever the devoted worshippers of Shiva, begin teaching the child the basic rituals of worship. At first, it is as simple as offering fresh flowers to the small Shiva lingam in the family's shrine. But as the child grows, they begin to take on more responsibility, lighting the oil lamps, carefully placing incense, and reciting the sacred chants. These early practices, simple as they may seem, are the foundation of a life that will be dedicated to spiritual growth and devotion. One day, as the child reaches the age of 7, they hear a tale that changes the course of their life forever. It is a story of Shiva's divine grace, how he gave the most profound knowledge to those who were ready to receive it, how he embraced the suffering of the world while remaining detached, and how he showed that true power comes from surrendering to the divine. This story is different from the others. It feels personal, as if Shiva himself is speaking directly to the child's heart. The idea that devotion to Lord Shiva can lead to liberation, to peace beyond the endless cycle of birth and death, takes root in their soul. This tale of divine grace marks the beginning of the child's deeper understanding of their life's purpose. The path ahead, once uncertain, is now illuminated by the light of spiritual wisdom. The realization that life is not just about living, but about awakening the soul to the presence of the divine, becomes a seed in the child's heart, a seed that will grow with time. In the quiet of the night, As the stars shimmer above Mount Kailash and the moon casts a silvery glow over the village, the child lies awake, feeling the presence of Shiva all around them. The wind whispers through the trees, the night animals sing their sacred songs, and the child's heart begins to align with the rhythm of the universe. It is in these moments that the child begins to understand the true meaning of their existence. They are here not just to live, but to awaken to the divine within. As the child's understanding deepens, they begin to see that life itself is a journey of awakening, growth, and surrender. Each step on this path is an offering to Shiva, each breath a reminder of the divine presence that sustains all life. The foundation is laid, and the time has come for the child to embark on their spiritual journey in earnest, guided by the wisdom of Lord Shiva. And so, as the first rays of the sun kiss the snowy peaks of Mount Kailash, the child feels the call to begin their formal spiritual practice. They know that the road ahead will be long and filled with challenges, but with Shiva's grace, they are ready to walk it. This chapter of their life ends with a deep, quiet knowing. The path of devotion has begun, and the journey toward enlightenment has already started. With this new resolve, the child begins their first steps into the sacred practice that will shape their life forever. The journey of a true devotee has now begun, and the next chapter in their story is about to unfold. As the child continues to grow under the watchful presence of Mount Kailash, their understanding of the path of devotion deepens with every passing day. They are now old enough to begin the next stage of their spiritual training, one that will bring them even closer to Lord Shiva. It is at this time that their parents, wise in the ways of devotion, introduce them to the most sacred of all chants, the Panchakshara mantra, Om Namah Shivaya. The moment the child hears these words, something stirs deep within their soul. The mantra, so simple in its form, yet so profound in its meaning, seems to resonate with something ancient, something beyond the grasp of the mind. Om Namah Shivaya, a phrase that translates to, I bow to Shiva, and yet carries the weight of the universe within its syllables. It is explained to the child that this mantra is not merely a chant, it is a key, a divine sound that unlocks the cosmic energy of the universe. Om is the sound of creation, the vibration from which all things spring, the primordial tone that binds the entire universe together. Nama means to bow, to surrender. Shivaya refers to Shiva, the auspicious one, the destroyer of ego, the giver of peace and wisdom. Each time the child chants the mantra, it becomes a bridge, linking them to Shiva, to the divine energy that flows through all things. The child's first experiences with the Panchakshara mantra are filled with wonder and awe. At first, it is nothing more than a series of words repeated, but slowly, with practice, the meaning begins to settle in. The child sits cross-legged in the quiet of their room, their hands resting gently on their knees, eyes closed, breathing softly. As they begin to chant, the world around them fades. The sound of Om Namah Shivaya reverberates not only through the air, but through their very being. With each repetition, the words seem to sink deeper into their soul, until the child feels as though the mantra itself is no longer something they are chanting, but something that is chanting them. At first, there is a subtle shift within, as if a fog is lifting. The mind, once restless and full of distractions, begins to quiet. The child feels their body relax, the tensions of the day melting away with each breath. They begin to understand that this simple chant holds power. It is more than a ritual. It is a gateway to a higher state of being, a way to align themselves with the cosmic rhythm of the universe. The child learns that with each breath, with each repetition of the mantra, they are calling upon the presence of Lord Shiva, inviting his divine grace into their life. One evening, as the child sits in meditation, the quiet hum of the mantra fills the space, the sounds blending into the stillness of the night. In that moment, something extraordinary happens. The child begins to feel a presence, gentle yet undeniable. It is as if Lord Shiva himself is near, watching over them, embracing them in his divine energy. The air seems to hum with a quiet power, and the child feels an overwhelming sense of peace, as if the universe itself is wrapping them in a soft, protective embrace. This moment of divine presence is a turning point in the child's journey. They understand, in the depths of their being, that devotion is not just a matter of words or rituals. It is a living connection, an ongoing relationship with the divine. The mantra becomes a way to call upon this connection, to strengthen their bond with Shiva, to open themselves to his wisdom and grace. They begin to realize that their devotion to Shiva is not a one-time offering, but a lifelong journey, a path of continuous growth and surrender. As the weeks pass, the child's connection to the mantra deepens. They begin to chant more frequently, making the mantra a part of their daily life. It becomes their anchor, the rhythm of their heart, the constant thread that weaves through the fabric of their existence. When they walk through the village, when they help their parents, when they sit quietly in nature, the mantra plays softly in their mind. It is always there, like a gentle murmur, reminding them of their purpose, of their connection to the divine. With the practice of the Panchakshara mantra, the child's understanding of peace, grace, and devotion expands. Their heart opens further, and they begin to feel an even deeper connection to the world around them. They see Shiva's presence in the river's flow, in the trees, in the faces of their fellow villagers. It is as if the world itself is infused with Shiva's divine energy, and the child is now attuned to it, aware of it, as if every moment is a sacred offering. But as with all things, there is always more to learn, more to experience. The child's devotion continues to grow, and they begin to feel a calling to leave the familiar comfort of their village and journey to the sacred places that Shiva himself once walked. The time has come for their first pilgrimage, a pilgrimage that will take them deeper into the heart of their faith, into the mysteries of the divine. This next step on their path will not only strengthen their devotion, but open their eyes to the deeper truths of existence. And so, with a heart full of devotion and a mind focused on the divine rhythm of Om Namah Shivaya, the child sets their sights on the sacred lands that have called to them in dreams and visions. The pilgrimage begins, and with it, a new chapter in their journey of spiritual awakening. As they step forward into the unknown, they carry with them the sacred mantra, the key to unlocking Shiva's divine presence, guiding them every step of the way. The time had come for the young devotee to undertake their first pilgrimage, a journey to the sacred Ganges River, the holy mother of India, believed to purify the soul and wash away all sins. The Ganges was more than just a river. It was a living goddess, a river of light and grace flowing from the heights of the Himalayas, carrying with it the power of divine transformation. For the devotee, this pilgrimage was not just a physical journey, but a sacred path leading to spiritual awakening. The road was long and the journey arduous, but every step carried a deep sense of purpose. The child, now a young devotee, felt a stirring in their heart, a call from within that urged them forward. As they made their way through villages, over mountains, and through forests, the atmosphere seemed to change. The further they traveled, the more their mind settled, and the more they could hear the inner quiet of their own being. With each step, they felt themselves drawing closer to something divine, something ancient and eternal. Along the way, the young devotee met fellow travelers, all heading in the same direction, their hearts filled with reverence for the sacred river. Some were seasoned pilgrims, their eyes serene, their steps measured, while others were just beginning their own journey, filled with excitement and anticipation. Each person had a story to tell. Some spoke of family blessings, others of personal trials and transformations. There were sages, humble in appearance, who shared their wisdom along the way. They spoke of the power of prayer, the importance of self-discipline, and the significance of devotion to the divine. The devotees exchanged mantras and hymns as they traveled, chanting in unison, their voices rising and falling with the rhythm of the road. With every chant of Om Namah Shivaya, the atmosphere seemed to hum with energy, as if the very ground beneath their feet was sacred, blessed by Shiva himself. The young devotee listened intently, absorbing the stories, the teachings, and the shared experiences of those around them. They understood that this pilgrimage was not just about reaching the Ganges, but about the transformation that would take place along the way, as they walked alongside others who shared the same devotion. As the pilgrimage stretched on, the young devotee's heart grew lighter, their mind clearer. The journey was physically demanding, and at times, exhaustion threatened to overtake them. But the pull of the sacred river, the promise of divine purification, kept them moving. They were reminded by the sages along the way that the true meaning of the pilgrimage was not just the destination, but the journey itself, the act of surrendering to the divine and allowing the path to reveal its wisdom. One evening, as they neared the banks of the Ganges, the sky began to change. The sun, dipping below the horizon, bathed the land in golden light, and the river shimmered in the fading rays. There was a stillness in the air, an expectation, as if the earth itself was holding its breath, in anticipation of what was to come. The young devotee reached the riverbank, just as twilight descended, the first stars beginning to twinkle in the sky. The Ganges was unlike anything they had ever seen. The river was vast, its waters flowing gently but with a purpose, as if carrying with them the wisdom of ages. The sound of the water, the soft lapping against the stones, was like a soothing lullaby, and the fragrance of the earth and water mixed with the incense and prayers of those around. The air felt charged with a divine energy, and the young devotee felt as if they were standing at the threshold of something much greater than themselves. They knelt by the river's edge, their heart filled with awe and reverence. The waters of the Ganges, shimmering in the evening light, seemed to call to them, inviting them to surrender, to purify their soul in the divine flow of the river. The young devotee dipped their hands into the cool, sacred water, and as they did, a sense of peace washed over them. It was as if all the doubts, fears, and distractions that had once clouded their mind were suddenly swept away, carried off by the river's current. In that moment, the devotee experienced a profound sense of divine revelation. The river, the sacred water of the Ganges, seemed to embody the grace and mercy of Lord Shiva himself. It was as if the very essence of Shiva was flowing through the river, offering divine purification, and the young devotee felt a deep connection to the God they had devoted their life to. It was a moment beyond time, beyond words, a glimpse of the divine truth that lay hidden within all things. The young devotee sat in stillness for what seemed like hours, meditating by the river, feeling the divine presence of Lord Shiva. In every ripple of water, every whisper of wind, every star in the sky. In this moment, they realized that the Ganges was not just a river. It was a reflection of the divine flow of energy that existed in all of creation. Everything, from the smallest pebble to the vastness of the sky, was interconnected through the divine grace of Shiva. The pilgrimage to the Ganges was a turning point in the young devotee's spiritual journey. It was not just a physical journey to a sacred place, but a deepening of their devotion, a purification of their soul, and a deep, abiding connection to the divine. As the night deepened and the first sounds of morning birds began to echo, the devotee knew that this moment would stay with them forever, a memory etched into the fabric of their being. With newfound clarity and purpose, the young devotee stood up, gazing at the flowing waters of the Ganges. The journey was far from over, but they now understood the deeper significance of their path. They had received the blessing of purification and spiritual awakening. From this moment on, they would walk the path of devotion with even more conviction, knowing that the Ganges had washed away their sins, leaving them open to receive the divine grace of Lord Shiva. As the morning sun rose over the Ganges, the young devotee prepared to continue their journey, knowing that their next steps would lead them deeper into the sacred rituals of devotion, where the heart would meet the divine in every breath, every step, every moment of life. Having bathed in the sacred waters of the Ganges and felt the divine presence of Lord Shiva, the young devotee's heart swells with a sense of spiritual renewal. But the pilgrimage is only a beginning, a step on the long path toward deeper devotion. The true essence of spiritual life lies not just in grand gestures or profound experiences, but in the small, quiet moments of daily practice. As the journey continues, the young devotee begins to understand that the path to Shiva's grace is walked through daily rituals, each moment infused with profound meaning and divine connection. Every morning, as the first light of dawn touches the earth, the young devotee rises. The air is crisp with the stillness of early morning, and the world seems to be holding its breath. The quietude of the early hours is sacred. This is the time to connect with the divine before the day's distractions take root. The devotee bows their head in gratitude, acknowledging the presence of Lord Shiva in every corner of existence, and begins their morning prayers. The rituals start with the lighting of incense, the soft smoke rising in delicate spirals toward the heavens. The scent of sandalwood and jasmine fills the air, a fragrant offering to Lord Shiva. With each breath of incense, the devotee inhales peace, clarity, and the sacred energy of the divine. The lighting of the incense is not just a simple act, but a deep, spiritual offering, an invitation for Shiva's presence to fill the space, to purify the mind, and to guide the heart toward devotion. Next, the devotee rings the bell, a small, hand-held bell made of brass, its clear, pure sound ringing through the silence of the morning. The bell is not merely an instrument of sound. It symbolizes the call of the divine, a beckoning that reaches into the deepest corners of the soul. The sound resonates in the air, clearing any remaining distractions and inviting the devotee into a moment of sacred stillness. It is a reminder that the divine is always present, always within reach, and that every sound, every movement, can be a sacred offering to Lord Shiva. The young devotee then kneels before their altar, where a small Shiva lingam sits, bathed in the soft glow of oil lamps. The sacred lingam, a representation of Lord Shiva's formless, infinite power, stands as a silent witness to the devotion being offered. The devotee begins to chant the Panchakshara mantra once more, the words flowing like a gentle stream, repeating the sacred sounds Om Namah Shivaya. With each chant, the devotee feels themselves drawn closer to Lord Shiva, as though the very vibrations of the mantra are resonating within the core of their being. The mantra becomes a bridge, connecting the devotee's heart to the divine, allowing them to transcend the limits of the material world and enter into the realm of pure consciousness. As the sun rises higher in the sky, the young devotee moves through their morning rituals, each action becoming a prayer, washing their hands with the purest water, offering flowers to the sacred lingam, and lighting the oil lamps. Each ritual is an opportunity to express their love, gratitude, and surrender to Shiva. These acts, simple yet profound, transform the mundane into the divine. The devotee learns that every moment of the day can be a sacred offering, every action infused with the power of devotion. Throughout the day, the young devotee continues to practice their devotion in small but significant ways. When they sit down to eat, they offer the first bite to Lord Shiva, recognizing the divine presence in all nourishment. When they help others in the community, they do so with the awareness that they are serving Shiva through service to others. Each moment becomes a prayer, each action a reflection of their growing connection to the divine. The evening rituals are equally important. As the sun begins to set and the world quiets once again, the devotee prepares for their evening offerings. They light the incense, this time with a sense of reflection, offering thanks for the day's experiences. The bell rings once more, its sound signaling the end of the day and the beginning of another sacred connection with the divine. As the devotee sits before the altar once more, the gentle flicker of the oil lamps casts a warm glow, and they offer their evening prayers. The mantra Om Namah Shivaya is repeated, not out of obligation, but as a deep, heartfelt expression of devotion, surrender, and connection to Lord Shiva. Through these daily rituals, the devotee learns that worship is not confined to temples or special occasions. It is a way of life. Every moment is an opportunity to express devotion, to surrender to the divine, and to deepen the relationship with Lord Shiva. They begin to see the sacredness in every action, the way the hands fold in prayer, the quiet breath before the chant, the act of offering food, or light, or love. Worship, they realize, is not something that is done only at certain times or in certain places. It is a constant, living connection with the divine that infuses every part of their life. The young devotee's sense of peace grows stronger each day. Their heart feels lighter, their mind clearer. The practices of daily devotion, which once seemed like obligations, now feel like moments of profound connection. The rituals are no longer just actions, but opportunities to experience Shiva's presence, to commune with the divine in the simplest of ways. It is through these rituals that the devotee learns to align their heart, mind and soul with the rhythm of the universe, the rhythm of Lord Shiva. As the chapter draws to a close, the young devotee begins to understand the deeper meanings behind these rituals. They realize that every act of devotion, every moment of worship, is a reflection of the divine energy that flows through all things. Each prayer, each offering, is a step closer to awakening, to understanding the true nature of the self. The journey of devotion has just begun, but with each passing day, the devotee's connection to Lord Shiva grows stronger, more profound, and more real. The next chapter beckons as the young devotee prepares to explore the deeper aspects of their spiritual journey, moving beyond rituals to an understanding of the inner workings of the soul and the nature of the divine. With a heart full of devotion and a mind filled with clarity, they are ready to continue their path of spiritual awakening. In the stillness of the early morning, as the devotee sits in quiet contemplation, they begin to understand something deeper, something about the very nature of the universe, something that Shiva, their beloved deity, had been trying to reveal all along. It is during this time of reflection that they hear the story of Shiva as Nataraja, the cosmic dancer, whose dance symbolizes both the creation and destruction of the universe. Nataraja, Shiva's divine form as the eternal dancer, does not merely perform for the sake of spectacle. His dance is a cosmic act, a cycle that continually shapes and reshapes the very fabric of existence. Each movement of his dance signifies the ongoing process of creation, preservation, and dissolution, which mirrors the natural rhythms of life itself. The devotee begins to see that everything in the universe, every birth, every death, every cycle of change, is tied to this dance. The flame in Shiva's hand represents destruction, but not in the sense of annihilation or death. Rather, it is a reminder that everything must eventually dissolve to make way for new creation. In his dance, Shiva does not destroy to punish, but to cleanse and to transform. The drum in his other hand beats the rhythm of creation, the sound of life itself, echoing the pulsation of the cosmos. The devotee meditates on this profound truth, that creation and destruction are not opposites, but part of an eternal dance that sustains the universe. Shiva's dance, with its grace and wildness, embodies the very cycle of life, which the devotee is beginning to grasp. Just as Shiva spins in a circle, the devotee reflects on the cycles of their own life, how they too have experienced moments of birth and death, of endings and beginnings. At times, they have clung to things, fearful of losing what they cherished. But now, in their growing understanding, the devotee begins to see the futility of attachment. The universe, like Shiva's dance, is constantly shifting, and the more they resist change, the more they are bound by it. Through meditation, the devotee realizes that all life is transient. They observe their breath, how it comes and goes, in and out, like the ebbing and flowing of the tide. The rhythm of the breath, like the rhythm of Shiva's dance, is constant, even in its cycles of pause and movement. Just as the universe is in constant flux, so too are they, as a being moving through cycles of growth, decay, and renewal. The concept of birth and death, which once seemed like stark, unchanging realities, now appears as part of a much larger, ever-turning wheel. The devotee understands now that detachment is not about coldness or indifference, but about embracing life fully without being bound to it. Just as the earth yields to the seasons, so too must they yield to the cycles of their own life, recognizing that every end carries the seed of a new beginning. This deeper understanding brings peace, as the devotee realizes that life is not something to be feared or resisted, but something to be experienced with awareness and acceptance. The imagery of Shiva's foot, crushing the demon of ignorance, becomes particularly significant. The devotee sees that their own attachments, their own ignorance, are the obstacles they must overcome. These attachments, whether to people, possessions, or even ideas, have kept them bound to the cycle of suffering. Yet through the dance of Shiva, the devotee realizes that true liberation comes from releasing the attachment to the self and surrendering to the divine flow. To dance with Shiva is to let go of control, to trust in the rhythm of the universe, and to be at peace with whatever comes. With this newfound understanding, the devotee begins to embrace the idea of life as a cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, both on the cosmic scale and within their own being. They know that in order to grow spiritually, they must allow their old selves to die, be it old patterns of thought, outdated beliefs, or attachments to worldly desires. In this sense, the cycle of destruction is not something to fear. It is the pathway to spiritual renewal. Just as a seed must fall to the ground and decay before it can sprout into a new tree, so too must the devotee shed their old self to make way for their spiritual awakening. In quiet moments of reflection, the devotee comes to understand the balance of life. The dance of Shiva teaches that neither creation nor destruction exists in isolation. They are interconnected, each one giving rise to the other. As the devotee contemplates this balance, they realize that their own life too must be balanced. It is not about becoming attached to either joy or sorrow, birth or death, but about embracing the constant dance of life with grace and acceptance. The ebb and flow of life, like the movement of Shiva's dance, is an eternal rhythm, and to align oneself with this rhythm is to experience peace. The devotee feels the urge to move deeper into their spiritual practice. They sense that their understanding is still in its early stages, and they yearn to experience more of the divine, more of Shiva's teachings, and more of the transformation that lies ahead. They recognize that the time has come for them to enter a deeper period of spiritual discipline and asceticism, where they will shed more layers of ego and attachment, purify their body and mind, and prepare themselves for a more profound connection with Shiva. As the chapter closes, The devotee stands at the threshold of a new phase of their journey. They know that this path is not an easy one, but they are ready. The teachings of Shiva's dance have shown them the nature of life and death, creation and destruction, and they now feel a deep resolve to move forward, embracing the discipline required to deepen their devotion. They are no longer afraid of the cycles of life. Instead, they are ready to step into the flow of the divine rhythm, knowing that with each step, they are becoming more aligned with the infinite dance of Shiva. The next phase of their spiritual journey awaits, a phase that will challenge them further and bring them closer to the divine truths they seek. The journey of devotion takes many forms, and after their profound realizations on the cosmic dance of Shiva, the young devotee feels called to enter a period of asceticism, a time of intense discipline and self-restraint. This period, while challenging, promises to bring them closer to the divine. They leave the comforts of their village, seeking a quiet, solitary place in the mountains, away from distractions and worldly pleasures. It is in this serene solitude that the devotee seeks to go deeper into their connection with Lord Shiva, purging the body and mind of all attachments. The first days are difficult. The young devotee begins their ascetic practice with the intention of fasting, spending long hours in meditation, and renouncing any pleasures of the world that might pull them away from their devotion. At first, the physical discomforts are overwhelming. Hunger pangs gnaw at their stomach, and the body, unused to such deprivation, protests in every way. The mind, too, rebels against the stillness, constantly wandering, pulling them away from the silence they seek. In the quiet of the mountains, with only the wind and the rustling leaves to break the silence, the devotee feels the full weight of their own desires. It is not just physical hunger that they feel, but a deeper, more pervasive yearning, a craving for comfort, for distraction, for something to fill the emptiness they feel. Yet the devotee does not succumb. They remember the teachings of Lord Shiva. Detachment is the path to liberation, and to conquer desire is to transcend the limitations of the body and the mind. Every hunger pang, every aching muscle, every thought that arises in the stillness becomes a challenge to face, a barrier to be overcome. As days stretch into weeks, the devotee grows accustomed to the emptiness, learning to quiet their desires and detach from the fleeting comforts that once seemed so necessary. They spend hours in meditation, focusing their mind on the divine presence of Lord Shiva. They repeat the Panchakshara mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, again and again, allowing the sacred sound to fill every corner of their being. Slowly, the mantra begins to penetrate the layers of their consciousness, like water sinking into the earth, washing away the impurities of thought and desire. The body becomes a temple of discipline, each sensation, each physical challenge, offering an opportunity to practice surrender and control. The devotee learns to detach from the physical body, recognizing it not as the self, but as a vessel, a temporary instrument that must be purified through discipline. The body, once driven by the cravings of the senses, becomes a tool of spiritual growth. In moments of extreme hunger or fatigue, the devotee simply offers these sensations to Lord Shiva, surrendering the need for comfort and control. Every pain, every discomfort, becomes an offering, a prayer in motion. In these intense moments, the young devotee begins to see the nature of their attachment more clearly. It is not just the attachment to material things, but the attachment to comfort itself. They realize how often they have sought to escape discomfort, to avoid challenges, to indulge their desires. But through the practice of asceticism, they begin to understand that true liberation lies not in the pursuit of pleasure, but in the acceptance of discomfort as a part of life. To face suffering with equanimity, without resistance, is to align oneself with the divine. Despite the hardships, the devotee begins to experience moments of deep peace, a tranquility that is not dependent on external circumstances, but is born from within. As the mind quiets and the body strengthens, the devotee enters deeper states of meditation. It is in these moments of stillness that they begin to experience the presence of Shiva, not as a distant deity, but as the living energy within themselves. They feel the divine flowing through their veins, the cosmic energy of creation and destruction pulsing in every cell of their body. One evening, as the devotee sits in silence beneath the stars, a profound sense of unity washes over them. They feel one with the universe, one with the earth, one with Shiva. The boundaries between self and other dissolve, and in that moment, they understand that they are not separate from the divine, but an expression of it. Lord Shiva, the destroyer of illusions, has revealed the truth. There is no separation between the devotee and the divine. All is one. The devotee's mind, once restless and distracted, is now still, their heart open to the divine light. They begin to see the world through new eyes, no longer caught in the illusion of separation, no longer clinging to the past or fearing the future. Every breath, every movement, every action becomes an expression of divine love and devotion. The practice of asceticism has purified them, allowing the light of Shiva to shine through. This deeper connection with Lord Shiva brings a sense of clarity and purpose. The devotee understands now that their journey is not about escaping the world or rejecting the body, but about transcending the illusions of attachment and desire. Through asceticism, they have learned that true liberation lies in embracing life fully, without clinging to it, without resisting its inevitable changes. As the chapter closes, the devotee prepares to leave the solitude of the mountains and return to the world. They have spent time in intense self-discipline and purification, but their journey is far from over. The lessons of asceticism have deepened their connection to Lord Shiva, but there is still much to learn. They know that the next phase of their journey will require them to embody these teachings in the world, to live with the same discipline, detachment, and devotion in the midst of life's challenges. And so, the devotee, now stronger and wiser, steps forward into the world, carrying with them the fruits of their ascetic practice, a deeper understanding of their true nature and their purpose in the world. They are no longer bound by attachment, but free to serve Lord Shiva through every action, every thought, and every moment of life. The path continues, and with each step, the devotee draws closer to the ultimate union with the divine. After a period of ascetic practice, the young devotee feels the need to delve deeper into the subtleties of spiritual discipline. The body has been purified, the mind quieted, but there is still much to understand. It is at this point that the devotee begins to learn pranayama, the ancient practice of controlling the breath, a technique that not only calms the body, but aligns the breath with the life force, or prana, and thus with the divine. Breath, the devotee learns, is far more than just a physical function. It is the very essence of life, the bridge between the material and the spiritual. The breath is always with them, as constant as the pulse of the heart, yet it is often ignored, taken for granted, as people rush through life unaware of its sacred nature. But in the stillness of their practice, the devotee begins to see that each breath is a direct link to the divine energy that flows through all things. The first lessons in pranayama are simple yet profound. The devotee begins by sitting in a comfortable position, focusing on the natural rhythm of their breath. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. At first, the mind resists. Thoughts rush in, worries, distractions, and the endless noise of the world. But the devotee persists, gently returning their focus to the breath, feeling the cool air as it enters through the nose, fills the lungs, and then leaves in a soft, steady exhale. With guidance from an experienced teacher, the devotee learns to extend the breath, to slow it down, to control it. The practice is not about force, but about awareness. Inhale deeply, then hold the breath for a few seconds, feeling the fullness of the air inside. Hold, and then release it slowly, with deliberate control. Each cycle of breath becomes a meditation in itself. The devotee feels the breath become an anchor, drawing their attention away from the distractions of the world and bringing them into a state of profound stillness. As the days pass, the devotee begins to notice the subtle power of the breath. They feel the prana moving through their body, a warm, vibrating energy that flows with each inhalation. The breath becomes a tool for connecting with the divine, a sacred act that brings peace, clarity, and focus. They realize that by controlling the breath, they are not just controlling the body, but also the mind. In each moment of conscious breathing, the noise of the world begins to fade, and the devotee is left with a profound sense of inner silence. The devotee also comes to understand that stillness is not merely the absence of movement, but the presence of something deeper, a connection to the divine that is felt in the very stillness of the breath. In moments of deep pranayama, the devotee enters a state of meditative stillness, where the body is relaxed, the mind is quiet, and the soul is open to the divine. It is in this space that the devotee feels the presence of Lord Shiva more clearly than ever before. His grace, his wisdom, his eternal energy. The practice of pranayama allows the devotee to enter into deeper and deeper states of meditation. As the breath becomes more controlled, the mind becomes more focused. The constant chatter of thoughts that once overwhelmed the devotee now quiets, allowing them to enter a state of pure awareness. With each passing day, the devotee grows more attuned to the subtle movements of the mind, observing its tendencies without becoming attached to them. The breath becomes the vessel through which the devotee can dive deeper into the ocean of consciousness, diving beyond thoughts, beyond the limitations of the body, and into the eternal presence of the divine. Through pranayama, the devotee also learns that stillness is not just an external state of physical quiet, but an inner quality, a state of being that allows them to transcend the distractions of the world. It is in this stillness that they begin to understand the self, realizing that the mind, which they once thought was their identity, is merely a temporary phenomenon. The true self, they discover, is the silent observer, the witness to the thoughts, the breath, and the world. This self, they realize, is the essence of Shiva, the eternal witness who is beyond time, beyond thought, beyond the illusion of the material world. As they continue their practice, the devotee's connection to Shiva deepens. Each breath, each moment of stillness becomes a communion with the divine. The breath becomes a prayer, an offering to Shiva, a means of surrendering to the flow of divine energy. The devotee begins to understand that to breathe in harmony with the universe is to align with the divine will, to accept the flow of life as it is, without resistance or fear. The devotee's mastery of the breath brings a sense of peace and clarity, but it also brings a new awareness of the nature of the mind. They now see how the mind, like the breath, can be controlled, guided, and ultimately transcended. The practice of pranayama has shown them that the mind is not something to be feared or fought against, but something to be understood, observed, and ultimately mastered. As the chapter draws to a close, the devotee reflects on the profound shifts that have taken place within. They have learned that through the breath, they can reach deeper states of consciousness, touch the divine, and still the restless mind. The path ahead is clearer now. Stillness, they know, is the key to understanding the self and Shiva. It is the space where they can experience true inner peace, where they can hear the whispers of the divine, and where they can merge with the eternal presence of Lord Shiva. And so, with the practice of pranayama firmly in place, the devotee prepares to take the next step on their spiritual journey, one that will lead them into even deeper states of consciousness as they explore the nature of the mind and the true essence of self. With the mastery of pranayama, the young devotee has learned to control the breath, and in doing so, has unlocked a deeper connection to the divine. Yet despite their progress, they now face a new challenge: the restless mind, that ever-churning force that seems to pull them in every direction. The breath may be calm, the body may be still, but the mind is a wild river, full of thoughts, distractions, and desires. The devotee begins to realize that true spiritual awakening cannot be achieved until the mind, too, is brought into harmony with the divine. The teachings of meditation reveal to the devotee the paradox of the mind. It is both a tool for spiritual growth and an obstacle that can hinder the path. The mind, when focused and disciplined, becomes a powerful instrument for achieving higher states of consciousness. But when scattered and undisciplined, it can lead the devotee further away from their true nature. In the stillness of meditation, the devotee begins to observe how their thoughts arise, seemingly without their control, like waves on the surface of the ocean, constantly shifting and changing. At first, the mind's restlessness seems overwhelming. Thoughts come unbidden, worries about the future, memories of the past, and even fleeting desires that seem to appear from nowhere. The devotee feels frustrated. Despite their deep commitment to the path, their mind refuses to be still. But they remember the teachings of Lord Shiva, who, though the master of the cosmos, sits in eternal meditation, untouched by the fluctuations of thought. The devotee realizes that they must learn to master the mind in the same way, through patience, practice, and self-awareness. The first step is learning to observe the mind without judgment. The devotee begins to see the thoughts as they arise, simply watching them without getting involved. They recognize that the thoughts themselves are not the problem. It is the attachment to those thoughts that causes suffering. The devotee understands that just as the river cannot be blamed for the waves it creates, the mind cannot be blamed for the thoughts it generates. It is their attachment to the thoughts, their identification with them, that creates disturbance. To combat this, the devotee begins a more focused practice of meditation, using techniques designed to calm and discipline the mind. One of the primary methods is the repetition of mantras, the sacred words and sounds that can help bring the mind back to the present moment. The devotee chants Om Namah Shivaya again and again, allowing the vibrations of the mantra to sink deeply into their consciousness. With each repetition, they feel the pull of the world around them begin to fade, replaced by the steady rhythm of the mantra. The sound becomes their anchor, their point of focus, drawing their mind away from distractions and back to the presence of Lord Shiva. As the devotee continues to chant, they begin to experience the subtle power of the mantra. Each syllable seems to vibrate within their body, sending ripples of peace through their nervous system. The noise of the external world quiets, and the chaos of the mind slowly recedes. They begin to notice that the more they focus on the mantra, the less room there is for other thoughts. The mind, once a storm of conflicting ideas and desires, begins to settle like a calm lake, its surface still and clear. In addition to the mantra, the devotee learns to use visualization as another technique to focus the mind. They are guided to visualize the image of Lord Shiva, sitting in deep meditation, his eyes closed in perfect stillness, his body radiant with divine energy. As they imagine Shiva's serene face, his flowing hair, his graceful form, the devotee feels a deep sense of peace fill their heart. This image of Shiva becomes their focal point, their beacon of inner calm. With each breath, each chant, the devotee imagines themselves merging with Shiva's presence, feeling his divine stillness flow through them. Gradually, the devotee begins to notice a shift within. The mind, though still active, becomes less overwhelming. The thoughts no longer control them. Instead, the devotee learns to observe them from a place of detachment. They no longer react to every thought that arises, but allow it to pass by, like clouds in the sky. With time, the devotee experiences moments of deep inner peace, where the mind is silent, and the world around them fades away. In these moments, they feel a profound connection to Shiva, as if the divine is speaking directly to them through the stillness. The devotee begins to understand that the mind, though constantly moving, is not inherently an obstacle. Rather, it is an instrument that can be trained to reflect the divine. They realize that stillness of the mind is not the absence of thought, but the ability to be present without attachment. True peace comes not from the suppression of thoughts, but from the non-identification with them. The mind is simply a tool through which the devotee can connect to the higher self, to the divine presence within. With the mastery of the breath and the quieting of the mind, the devotee feels a deeper inner harmony than ever before. They are no longer pulled in every direction by external circumstances or internal desires. Instead, they are anchored in the present moment, where the peace of Lord Shiva resides. In these moments of quiet reflection, the devotee experiences the power of stillness, a profound sense of connection to the divine, to the world, and to the self. This stillness is the key to understanding the deeper truths of existence. As the chapter draws to a close, the devotee prepares to enter the next phase of their journey, one that involves balancing the inner and outer worlds. They have learned to calm the mind, but now they must apply this newfound peace to their daily life. The challenge ahead is to maintain this inner harmony amidst the chaos and distractions of the world. This transition marks a new phase in the devotee's spiritual evolution, where the work of the mind becomes integrated with the work of the world, leading to a deeper understanding of their purpose in life. The path ahead is clear now. The devotee knows that through the practice of meditation, mantra, and mindfulness, they can find peace within, and in that peace, they will discover the divine presence of Lord Shiva in every moment, every thought, every breath. The dance of thoughts has slowed, and the path of stillness has begun. Having spent countless hours in meditation, pranayama, and ascetic practice, the young devotee begins to experience a profound sense of inner peace. The mind has quieted, the body purified, and the connection to Lord Shiva feels more tangible with each passing day. Yet as they sit in stillness, a realization begins to dawn on them. True spiritual practice cannot be confined solely to the inner world. The devotee understands that while meditation and rituals refine the spirit, they must also be balanced with the duties of daily life, the actions of the outer world. Spiritual awakening is not meant to be an escape from the world, but a transformation within it. The devotee reflects on the teachings of Lord Shiva, who embodies both the ascetic and the householder, the yogi and the king, the destroyer and the creator. Shiva's divine nature encompasses all aspects of existence, from the serene silence of meditation to the wild, dynamic energy of the world. The devotee now realizes that their own life must reflect this balance. The stillness of the mind must be coupled with the activity of the world, and the inward journey must be expressed outwardly through love, service, and mindful action. It is with this understanding that the devotee embarks on their next phase of spiritual growth, mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of bringing conscious awareness to every action, every thought, every moment, and recognizing that each act, no matter how small, can be an offering to Shiva. From sweeping the floor to washing their hands, the devotee begins to see the divine in everything. They realize that every task can be done with intention and love, transforming the mundane into the sacred. One morning, the devotee begins sweeping the floor of their small ashram. At first, it seems like an ordinary chore, a task that must be completed to maintain cleanliness. But as they sweep, they remind themselves that this too can be an offering to Lord Shiva. With every stroke of the broom, they focus on the rhythm of the motion, the movement of energy through the body, the breath flowing in time with the task. They chant softly to themselves, Om Namah Shivaya, and with each chant, the act of sweeping becomes a prayer, a way of honoring the divine presence that resides in the smallest of actions. The devotee begins to practice this mindfulness in all aspects of daily life. They wash the dishes with reverence, feeling the water flow over their hands as a reminder of the divine flow of life itself. They prepare food, knowing that the nourishment they provide is a sacred offering. Every interaction, every moment, becomes an opportunity to serve Shiva through service to others. In this way, the devotee comes to understand that the true path of devotion is not just about retreating from the world, but about engaging with it fully, with awareness and love. As the devotee's mindfulness deepens, they come to see the interconnectedness of all things, the way the inner world reflects the outer, and how every action ripples out into the universe. The devotee recognizes that their thoughts, words, and deeds are not separate from the divine. They are expressions of the divine itself. The divine energy of Shiva flows through every action, every moment, and the devotee's task is to align themselves with this energy in everything they do. They begin to see themselves not as separate from the world, but as part of an intricate web of creation, destruction, and renewal. Much like the cosmic dance of Shiva, the balance of the inner and outer worlds is not always easy to maintain. There are moments when the distractions of the world threaten to pull the devotee's focus away from the path of mindfulness. The hustle of daily life, the demands of work, relationships, and responsibilities, all of these can overwhelm the peace they have cultivated within. But the devotee understands that these challenges are not obstacles. They are opportunities for growth. Just as Shiva embodies both the tranquil meditator and the energetic dancer, the devotee must learn to navigate the duality of existence with grace. The outer world may be filled with noise and chaos, but the inner world remains a sanctuary of stillness, a place of refuge that can be accessed at any time through conscious awareness. It is through this balance that the devotee begins to see the divine presence in the physical world, the temple, the body, the actions of the everyday. Every step they take in the world becomes a step toward Shiva, every breath an offering. They begin to understand that spiritual practice is not limited to the time spent in meditation or prayer, but is woven into the fabric of life itself. Every moment can be sacred. Every act can be an offering to the divine. This understanding leads the devotee toward a deeper exploration of the temples, places where the inner and outer worlds converge. The temple, they learn, is not just a physical structure, but a representation of the divine presence in the world. It is a space where the sacred and the mundane meet, where the devotee can connect with the divine in both physical and spiritual forms. The rituals performed in the temple, offering flowers, lighting lamps, ringing bells, are not just acts of devotion. They are expressions of the inner work that has been cultivated through years of practice. The temple, like the body, is a vessel that holds the divine energy, and through the act of worship, the devotee aligns themselves with that energy. The devotee begins to visit the local temples, observing the rituals with reverence and humility. They understand that the temple is a mirror of their own inner being, a reflection of the sacred within the material world. As they participate in the rituals, chanting, offering flowers, bowing before the deity, they feel the divine presence flowing through them. The experience is not just about worshipping a statue or image, but about connecting to the living energy of Shiva, who resides not only in the temple, but in all things. As the chapter comes to a close, the devotee reflects on the balance they are learning to maintain between the inner and outer worlds. They realize that true spiritual growth comes not from retreating from the world, but from learning to live in harmony with it, from aligning every thought, action, and breath with the divine. The temple within their heart, they know, is the ultimate place of worship, and the world around them is the temple in which they are called to serve. The path of devotion continues, and as the devotee prepares to deepen their understanding of the divine, they know that the next step will take them even further into the exploration of Shiva's presence, both in the world and within themselves. Having spent years in meditation, mindfulness, and self-discipline, the young devotee now approaches a new phase of their journey, a pilgrimage to the temple. While they have felt the divine presence in their solitude, in their prayers, and in the rhythms of daily life, the temple holds a special significance. It is not only a physical space, but a spiritual one, a place where the divine and the earthly meet. The devotee now understands that temples are not just structures of stone and wood, but living manifestations of Lord Shiva's energy, where the sacred is made tangible and accessible. As the devotee steps into the temple for the first time, they are immediately struck by the atmosphere. The air is thick with incense, the smell of sandalwood and jasmine drifting up toward the high vaulted ceilings. The sound of soft chanting fills the space, the voices of devotees merging with the ringing of temple bells. It is a place that feels alive with energy, reverberating with the divine presence of Shiva. The walls are adorned with intricate carvings, each depicting scenes from the great stories of Shiva's life: the cosmic dance, the mountain of Kailash, the marriage to Parvati, and the taming of the Ganga. These images are not just artistic expressions, but representations of the divine, captured in stone and offered as a form of devotion. The temple is alive with movement, both physical and spiritual. The priests move with grace as they perform their rituals, lighting lamps and offering incense. The devotees, with their eyes closed in reverence, walk barefoot on the cool stone floors, their hearts and minds focused on the presence of Lord Shiva. The devotee feels the weight of this sacred space, the centuries of prayers, the devotion of countless souls who have passed through its doors, each leaving behind a trace of their energy. It is in this space that the devotee understands the profound truth that the divine is present, not just in the stillness of solitude, but in the collective energy of worship and devotion. As the devotee watches the priests perform the morning puja, the ritual offering to Shiva, they are filled with awe. The rituals are simple, but filled with deep meaning. Each gesture, each word, a part of a cosmic order that has been passed down through generations. The ringing of the bell marks the beginning of the offering, a sound that seems to pierce the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds. The priests offer fresh flowers to the Shiva Lingam, the sacred stone that represents the formless aspect of Shiva. These flowers, though humble, are symbols of devotion. Their beauty and fragrance carried as an offering to the divine. Next, the incense is lit, and the smoke curls upward, a silent prayer ascending to the heavens. The devotee watches in reverence as the priest waves the incense before the lingam. The smoke, rising like the soul's ascent toward divine union. The scent fills the temple, mingling with the chants of Om Namah Shivaya, creating a space of profound connection and peace. The devotee follows the movements of the priest, each offering a gesture of respect, and they feel the sacredness of the moment fill their being. The devotee is struck by the presence of Shiva in every corner of the temple. It is not confined to the altar or the image of the lingam, but it fills the entire space. Each pillar, each carving, every detail infused with the energy of the divine. The stone walls, worn with time, seem to vibrate with sacred energy. They feel that Shiva's presence is not just a concept to be understood, but a living reality. one that is accessible in every sacred space, in every ritual, and in every offering made with love and devotion. As the devotee walks around the temple, they are drawn to the magnificent statue of Shiva as Nataraja, the Lord of Dance. The figure is powerful yet serene, the cosmic dance, frozen in time. They observe the graceful movement of the statue, Shiva's hand raised in blessing, his foot crushing the demon of ignorance beneath him. In this dance, they see the entire universe, the cycles of birth and death, creation and destruction, the balance of all things. It is in this moment that the devotee understands that the temple is not just a place of worship, but a microcosm of the universe itself, where every aspect of existence is reflected in the divine. The devotee is overwhelmed with a sense of divine presence, a realization that the temple is not merely a physical space, but a portal to the divine. They understand that it is in these sacred spaces that the earthly and the heavenly converge, that the energy of Shiva is not confined to the images or rituals, but permeates everything. The stone of the temple is not inert. It is filled with life, with vibration, with divine energy. Every corner of the temple, from the most ornate carving to the smallest offering of flowers, is a reflection of the divine presence that resides in all things. In this space, the devotee experiences a profound revelation. They realize that Shiva's presence is not something distant or separate, but something that lives within them and within everything around them. The temple, like the self, is a reflection of this divine energy. The image of Shiva in the temple, the rituals performed, and the prayers offered are all ways to access this energy, to connect with the divine, and to align the self with the rhythm of the cosmos. The experience in the temple deepens the devotee's understanding of Shiva's divine attributes, his creation and destruction, his wisdom and compassion, his formlessness and form. They now understand that Shiva is both within the temple and beyond it, in every stone, every breath, and every moment of life. The temple is not just a place to seek the divine, but a space where the devotee can find the divine already present, already in their own heart. As the chapter concludes, the devotee reflects on the lessons learned in the temple, the unity of the divine and the material, the sacredness of every action, and the interconnectedness of all things. They leave the temple with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that the true temple is within them. With this knowledge, the devotee prepares to continue their journey, carrying the presence of Shiva with them wherever they go. The temple has shown them that the divine is always accessible, in every sacred space and in every moment of life. As the devotee's journey deepens, they find themselves facing new layers of wisdom, each revealing profound truths about Lord Shiva's role in the universe. The temple, the rituals, and the teachings they have encountered all point to one central reality. Shiva is not just one god, but three divine forms, each playing a unique role in the eternal dance of existence. These forms, Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Rudra, the destroyer, each represent a crucial aspect of the cycle of life, and the devotee is now called to understand the relationship between these forms and their deeper connection to the cosmos. The devotee begins with the form of Brahma, the creator, whose role is to bring forth all things from the primordial void. They meditate on the profound act of creation, the unfolding of the universe from nothing, the birth of stars, of life, of the very breath of existence. Shiva, as Brahma, is the force that stirs the cosmic waters and breathes life into every corner of the universe. The devotee realizes that creation is not merely an external event, but an ongoing process, one that happens within every soul. Each thought, each breath, each moment of life is a small act of creation, a spark of the divine in the mundane. To contemplate Brahma is to understand that creation is not just about bringing something into being, but about sustaining it long enough for it to find its purpose. The devotee understands that everything created by Shiva, whether a star, a tree, or a human life, is part of a grand interconnected web of existence. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything is part of a greater plan, unfolding through time. They see that life itself, in all its forms, is sacred, and every moment is a creative act, an expression of Shiva's will. Next, the devotee turns their attention to Vishnu, the preserver. Vishnu's role is to protect and maintain the balance of the universe, ensuring that the forces of creation continue to flow smoothly. They reflect on how the universe, like any creation, must be nurtured, cared for, and maintained. Vishnu, as the preserver, is the force that holds all things together, bringing harmony where there is chaos, peace where there is conflict. The devotee realizes that preservation is not just about sustaining the physical world, but about ensuring that the spiritual essence of each being remains intact, that the light of divinity continues to shine within each soul. In this contemplation, the devotee sees that preservation is a constant effort. Just as the body must be cared for, nourished, and protected to continue functioning, so too must the mind and soul be nurtured through spiritual practice. Vishnu's presence is found in every moment of peace, every act of kindness, every moment of balance in the world. The devotee understands that the task of preserving life and its divine essence is not a passive one. It requires conscious effort, devotion, and care. They begin to see the divine in every act of preservation, whether it is tending to a garden, nurturing a relationship, or maintaining their own inner peace. Finally, the devotee contemplates Rudra, the destroyer, who is often misunderstood in the human mind as merely the force of destruction. But the devotee now understands that Rudra's role is just as important as the other two forms. Destruction is not the end, but the necessary process of clearing away the old, the unnecessary, and the stagnant, so that new life can emerge. Rudra's destruction is not to be feared, for it is the cleansing force that makes space for the new. The cycle of life, the endless dance of birth, death, and rebirth, cannot continue without the inevitable act of destruction. The devotee contemplates how destruction permeates every part of life, from the death of cells in the body to the fall of old structures in society. Every time something is destroyed, it makes way for something new. Just as the seasons must change, so too must the cycles of life, death, and rebirth continue. The devotee reflects on their own life, the moments of personal loss and growth, and how these moments of destruction have always led to renewal. They come to understand that without destruction, creation could not flourish, and without preservation, destruction would be futile. Shiva's three forms, Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra, teach the devotee the essential truth that life cannot exist without death. Creation cannot thrive without preservation, and destruction cannot happen without renewal. These forces are not opposites, but complementary parts of a unified whole. The devotee begins to feel a deep sense of peace in this understanding, for they now see that the entire universe, in all its chaos and beauty, is a reflection of this divine dance of creation, preservation, and destruction. As they meditate on Shiva's three forms, the devotee reflects on how these aspects also manifest within their own life. Every person's life, they realize, moves through cycles of creation, preservation, and destruction. They create new thoughts, new experiences, and new goals. They work to preserve the light of their soul, nurturing their spiritual path. And like Shiva, they must also destroy. Letting go of old patterns, attachments, and illusions that no longer serve them. This cycle This dance is what allows them to evolve spiritually, to grow closer to Shiva, and to the truth of their own divine nature. The chapter ends with the devotee sitting quietly in contemplation, recognizing the paradox of Shiva's divine nature. Shiva is both the creator and the destroyer, the nurturer and the cleanser, the one who allows life to flourish and the one who removes what is no longer needed. This paradox, the devotee realizes, is not a contradiction, but a profound truth. It is in the balance of these forces, creation, preservation, and destruction, that the universe finds its true harmony. With this deeper understanding, the devotee reflects on the impermanence of life. Creation and destruction are not separate, but part of the same cycle, and they understand that impermanence is the nature of existence. The devotee feels a deep surrender to the flow of life, accepting that all things are born, preserved, and eventually pass away. This acceptance brings peace, for they know that in each moment they are part of the great cycle, dancing with Shiva through the endless cycles of creation, preservation, and destruction. The journey continues, and the devotee, now with a deeper understanding of life's impermanence, prepares to embrace the next phase of their path, one that will lead them even closer to the divine presence of Lord Shiva. As the devotee's spiritual journey deepens, a new truth begins to unfold before them, one that is both profound and inescapable. It is the realization of impermanence, the understanding that life is a constant cycle of birth, growth, decay, and death. As they meditate on the nature of existence, the devotee contemplates the role of Shiva, both the destroyer and the restorer of the universe. Shiva's divine dance of creation, preservation, and destruction reveals a fundamental truth. Everything in life is impermanent. The only constant is change. The devotee reflects on the cycles of nature, the changing seasons, the rising and setting of the sun, the ebb and flow of the tides. All of these are metaphors for the greater cycle of life and death, a cycle that governs the universe and every living being within it. Shiva, in his form as Rudra the destroyer, is not merely a force of chaos or annihilation. Rather, he is the divine force that removes what is no longer needed, making way for new life, new possibilities, and new beginnings. Through Shiva's destruction comes renewal, the clearing away of the old, the dead, and the stagnant to make space for the fresh, the vital, and the new. The devotee meditates on death, not as something to fear or resist, but as an essential part of the cycle of existence. They come to understand that death is not the end, but a transition, a passage from one state of being to another. The body, though impermanent, is not the self. It is merely a vessel that carries the soul for a time. The soul, like Shiva, is eternal, ever renewing and transforming through the cycles of life. Just as the seasons pass, only to return again, so too does life, death, and rebirth occur in an endless rhythm, one that is beyond human comprehension, yet deeply felt in the soul. As the devotee reflects on death and rebirth, they also contemplate the nature of their own existence. In their lifetime, they have experienced moments of personal death, the loss of loved ones, the end of relationships, the death of old beliefs and identities. Yet through each ending, something new has been born within them. New understandings, new perspectives, new experiences. The devotee comes to see that these personal deaths, while painful, are necessary for spiritual growth. Every time something within them dies, it clears space for new life to emerge. This, they realize, is the eternal rhythm of Shiva's dance, the balance of creation and destruction that makes all growth possible. In this contemplation, the devotee begins to see death not as a tragedy, but as a natural part of the divine process. Shiva, the restorer, does not merely destroy for the sake of destruction. He destroys to make way for creation. Without death, there can be no rebirth. Just as the seed must break open in order to give rise to a new plant, so too must the old self die to make way for the new self. The devotee understands that spiritual awakening is a process of constant rebirth, a shedding of old skins, old identities and attachments, so that the soul can be born anew in each moment. The devotee, now deeply immersed in the teachings of impermanence, reflects on the transient nature of life. They realize that attachment to the temporary aspects of existence, be it to the body, to material wealth, or even to relationships, only leads to suffering. Everything they now see is temporary. Even the experiences that seem most permanent, love, success, happiness, are fleeting. The devotee comes to understand that true peace and freedom come not from clinging to the transient, but from embracing the impermanence of life and surrendering to the divine will. They now begin to meditate on living in accordance with divine will, understanding that the divine plan is much greater than their own limited desires or ambitions. Just as the universe unfolds through cycles of creation, preservation and destruction, so too must their life unfold according to the natural flow of existence. To live in harmony with the divine will is to accept the impermanence of life, to let go of attachments, and to surrender to the rhythm of the cosmos. The devotee also realizes that understanding impermanence does not mean disengaging from life. Rather, it is an invitation to live more fully, to appreciate each moment as it comes, and to understand that even the most difficult experiences are part of a greater divine plan. Every moment, whether of joy or sorrow, is a gift, an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to evolve. The devotee knows now that to live in alignment with divine will is to embrace the cycles of life and death with equanimity, knowing that everything, in the end, returns to Shiva. As the devotee reflects on the teachings of impermanence, they begin to feel a deep sense of inner peace. They understand that life, with all its fluctuations, is a journey of transformation, a journey that will ultimately lead them back to the source of all things, Shiva. Death, they now realize, is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced as a part of the divine dance. Life and death are two sides of the same coin, both necessary for the unfolding of the universe. But as the devotee meditates further, a new challenge arises. Fear. Fear of death, fear of loss, fear of the unknown. While they understand the impermanence of life, they also recognize that fear is a natural human response to the uncertainties of existence. Fear is the illusion that keeps them attached to the material world, holding them back from embracing the fullness of life and death. The devotee understands that to truly surrender to Shiva and to live in harmony with the flow of existence, they must overcome this fear. Only by releasing the grip of fear can they fully embrace the cycle of life and death, trusting that every ending is also a new beginning. As the chapter closes, the devotee reflects on this challenge. They know that their path ahead will require them to face their fears, to confront the parts of themselves that still cling to attachments, to comfort, and to certainty. But they also know that with each fear they face, they come closer to embracing the divine flow of existence, closer to understanding the deeper truth of life's impermanence. The journey is ongoing, but the devotee is now ready to confront this challenge with faith, courage, and surrender, knowing that Shiva will guide them every step of the way. The path of overcoming fear is the next step in the devotee's spiritual journey, a journey that will deepen their understanding of both life and death, and lead them to a profound union with Shiva's eternal presence. The journey of the young devotee has been one of profound realization and transformation. Having meditated on the impermanence of life and the eternal cycles of creation, preservation and destruction, they now face their greatest challenge yet: fear. Fear has been a shadow following them throughout their life, lurking in the corners of their mind, from the fear of death to the fear of failure, the fear of loss, and the fear of the unknown. Despite their understanding of impermanence and the teachings of Shiva, fear still holds its grip. It is a natural part of the human experience, but the devotee knows now that it is time to transcend it. Shiva, the eternal destroyer, has already shown them that death is not to be feared, but embraced as a part of the divine dance of life. Yet even now the devotee is confronted with the fear of letting go, the fear of truly surrendering to the flow of existence, fear of the unknown, fear of stepping fully into the divine path, and fear of losing control over their own life's direction, all weigh heavily on their heart. How can they fully embrace Shiva's presence when the shadow of fear remains? The devotee turns to the wisdom of Shiva, understanding that fear is an illusion, a creation of the mind, and not a reflection of the true nature of reality. Fear arises from attachment, from the need to control, from the desire to protect the self. But the self, as they have learned, is not the body, nor the mind, nor the ego. The true self is eternal, one with the divine, and beyond the reach of fear. Shiva, in his formlessness, embodies the strength to transcend all fears. His presence is the ultimate protection, a shield of divine light that can cut through the darkness of fear. To confront their fear, the devotee begins to practice mindfulness with greater intention. Every time fear arises, whether it is the fear of physical harm, the fear of loss, or the fear of failure, they pause, breathe deeply, and remind themselves of Shiva's protection. They recall the image of Shiva sitting in stillness, undisturbed by the world's chaos, impervious to the illusions of the mind. Shiva's tranquility is a reminder that fear cannot touch the soul that is rooted in divine consciousness. In meditation, the devotee faces the fears that have been lurking beneath the surface. The fear of death, the greatest of all fears, rises up like a shadow, and the devotee feels the weight of its presence. But in that moment, they remember the teachings of Shiva as the destroyer and restorer of the universe. Death, they understand, is not an end but a transition, a release of the physical body to make way for the eternal soul. It is part of the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, and the soul is impervious to it. By embracing death as a natural process, the devotee transcends the fear of it. The devotee meditates on failure, the fear of not living up to expectations, the fear of falling short. They see how this fear has held them back from fully stepping into their true potential. But in Shiva's teachings, they find the courage to accept that failure is not a reflection of their worth. Failure is simply another form of destruction, clearing the way for growth and new opportunities. Shiva, who has created and destroyed countless worlds, shows the devotee that failure is not something to fear, but an integral part of the path toward spiritual awakening. As the devotee confronts these fears, they feel a growing sense of inner strength. They realize that fear is not something to fight or resist, but something to acknowledge and transcend. Fear arises, but it does not define them. The devotee recalls the ancient teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna assures Arjuna, "You are never born, you never die, you are eternal." In this understanding, the devotee begins to shed the illusion of the body and the ego as their true self, knowing that the soul is eternal and untouched by fear. Fear, they come to realize, can only exist as long as they identify with the impermanent self, the body and the mind. Through this process of inner reflection and meditation, the devotee learns to confront and dissolve their fear. They come to understand that the divine presence of Shiva offers protection and strength, a strength that lies within the devotee not in the external world. This divine strength is not a force that protects them from physical harm or suffering, but a quiet, unshakable peace that arises from the realization that the soul is immortal and cannot be harmed by the forces of fear. The devotee now feels a deep sense of clarity and courage. They understand that the path of the devotee is not about avoiding fear, but about facing it with courage and unwavering faith in Shiva. The fear of death, failure, and the unknown are mere illusions that have no hold over the soul. Through the grace of Lord Shiva, the devotee learns to walk through life with the fearlessness of the divine, knowing that they are always protected by the infinite presence of the divine within. As the chapter comes to a close, the devotee reflects on their newfound inner courage and clarity. They have faced their deepest fears and emerged stronger, no longer bound by the illusions of fear that once held them back. This newfound courage is the foundation for their next phase of spiritual awakening, surrender. The devotee now understands that surrender is not about weakness, but about embracing the flow of life with trust and openness. To surrender is to release the need for control, to let go of the fear of the unknown, and to trust that the divine will guide them through every challenge and every triumph. With fear conquered and courage rising, the devotee is now ready to enter the next stage of their journey, one of deep surrender to the divine will of Shiva, where true spiritual freedom and enlightenment await. This transition into surrender marks the beginning of a profound shift, a shift from the active effort of overcoming fear to the peaceful acceptance of divine grace. The path continues, but now with the full embrace of the divine presence of Shiva, both within and around the devotee. With their fears conquered and their understanding of the impermanence of life deepened, the devotee now enters a new stage of spiritual awakening, the stage of surrender. After all the practices of meditation, pranayama, asceticism, and mindfulness, the devotee comes to understand that the ultimate path to liberation is through the act of surrender to Lord Shiva. It is here, in this surrender, that true peace and divine grace are found. Surrender is not about giving up or losing oneself, the devotee learns, but about letting go of the ego, the false self that clings to desires, fears, and illusions. To surrender to Shiva is to acknowledge that the self is not separate from the divine, but a manifestation of it. The devotee comes to understand that true freedom comes not from controlling life, but from trusting in Shiva's will and allowing the divine to guide them through the ebb and flow of existence. In their deepening meditation, the devotee reflects on the power of devotion, the path of bhakti, and its profound transformative qualities. Bhakti is not just an intellectual understanding or a ritualistic practice. It is the surrender of the heart, the opening of the soul to the divine. The devotee realizes that devotion is a radical shift from the struggle for personal gain or control to a state of complete trust and surrender to Lord Shiva's divine will. It is in this surrender that the devotee finds peace, because the ego no longer needs to fight or manipulate the world. The divine will, which knows what is best, becomes their guiding light. The devotee begins to chant with greater devotion and depth, offering their heart and soul in each repetition of the Panchakshara mantra, Om Namah Shivaya. These sacred words are no longer mere sounds, but a reflection of the surrendered heart, each syllable a plea for divine grace and guidance. The devotee realizes that with each chant, they are not simply asking for favors or blessings, but surrendering their will to Shiva, trusting that the divine knows their path, even when they do not. The power of surrender is not instantaneous, and the devotee struggles at times with letting go of old attachments. There are moments when the desire to control still arises, when the ego insists on holding tight to its old habits, its familiar fears, and its doubts. But with every challenge, The devotee returns to their practice of devotion and prayer, reaffirming their trust in Shiva. They begin to see how the act of surrender is not a momentary event, but a continuous process, unfolding over time. Every moment of surrender, every breath offered to Shiva, is an opportunity to deepen their connection with the divine. As the devotee continues their path of bhakti, they begin to experience the transformative power of surrender. Slowly, the turbulence within their heart begins to subside. Where once there was fear, there is now peace. Where once there was doubt, there is now trust. The devotee begins to see that surrendering to Shiva's will does not diminish them, but expands their sense of self. They no longer feel alone or isolated. They feel embraced by the divine presence in every moment. Shiva, the cosmic force of creation, preservation, and destruction, is not a distant entity, but an intimate presence that resides in the devotee's heart, guiding them through life with boundless love and compassion. In this state of surrender, the devotee's experience of divine grace deepens. They feel Shiva's presence in the smallest details of life, in the sounds of nature, in the rhythm of their breath, and in the pulse of their own heart. Divine grace is not something separate from them, but something that flows within them, a current of light and energy that nurtures and sustains them. The devotee begins to understand that grace is not earned through effort or achievement, but is freely given by Shiva to all who open their hearts in devotion. The act of surrender becomes a prayer, not a request for something external, but an offering of the self. In each act of surrender, the devotee is reminded that they are not separate from Shiva, but part of the vast cosmic dance that Shiva orchestrates. This realization fills the devotee's heart with a sense of humility and gratitude. They understand that devotion is not about seeking the divine in the future, but recognizing it in the present moment, in everything that is already unfolding. Each breath, each thought, each action becomes an offering to Shiva, and the devotee begins to live each moment with a deep sense of reverence. As the chapter progresses, the devotee begins to understand the essence of Shiva's cosmic role, his eternal dance of creation, preservation, and destruction. The devotee reflects on Shiva as Nataraja, the Lord of Dance, whose cosmic dance sustains the universe. Shiva's dance is not just a metaphor for the cycles of the cosmos, but an embodiment of the dynamic flow of energy that underlies all of existence. The devotee realizes that their own life is part of this dance, and that through surrendering their ego and desires, they too become part of the divine rhythm. The dance of Shiva is a reflection of the cosmic cycles of life, death, and rebirth. The devotee begins to see their own life as a dance, a flow of energy and consciousness that moves through creation, destruction, and renewal. Each step in this dance is an offering to the divine, a celebration of the eternal rhythm that sustains the universe. The devotee feels the freedom and grace that comes from stepping into this rhythm, allowing Shiva's dance to guide them toward deeper realization and enlightenment. The chapter concludes with the devotee meditating on the power of surrender, not as an act of weakness, but as an act of complete trust in the divine. They now understand that to surrender to Shiva is to align themselves with the divine will, to become part of the cosmic dance that governs all things. In this surrender, they find not only peace and grace, but a deeper understanding of their purpose in the world. The devotee is ready to take the next step in their spiritual journey, a journey that will lead them to even greater levels of devotion, wisdom, and union with the divine. This transition marks a new phase of spiritual growth, where surrender is no longer just an act of devotion, but a way of living in harmony with the divine flow of life. The path continues, and with each step, the devotee moves closer to the ultimate realization of Shiva's presence in every breath, every thought, and every moment. Having embraced the path of surrender, The devotee now enters a new phase of understanding, a deeper exploration of the cosmic rhythm that shapes the universe. This rhythm is embodied in Shiva's dance, the Nataraja, the Lord of Dance, whose sacred movements symbolize the eternal cycles of creation, preservation, and destruction. The devotee, now deeply immersed in their journey, contemplates the profound significance of this divine dance, realizing that it is not just a symbolic gesture, but the very force that drives the universe itself. Shiva's dance, the devotee learns, is a representation of the eternal process of cosmic creation and dissolution. Every movement, every gesture, and every step of Nataraja is imbued with divine meaning. The ring of fire that surrounds Shiva, in his Nataraja form, represents the cycle of time, the endless ebb and flow of creation and destruction. The flames that leap around him signify the transformative power of destruction, which makes way for new creation. In one hand, Shiva holds the damaru, a small drum that beats the rhythm of creation, while in the other hand, he holds the flame of destruction, symbolizing the force that consumes all in order to bring about renewal. As the devotee reflects on this dance, they begin to understand that creation, preservation, and destruction are not separate but interwoven parts of an eternal cycle. Each act of creation is followed by preservation, ensuring that what has been created flourishes, and each act of preservation ultimately leads to destruction, which clears the way for new creation to arise. The devotee sees that Shiva's dance represents the dynamic balance between these forces. Nothing in the universe is static. Everything is in constant motion, flowing in harmony with the cosmic rhythm. The devotee's thoughts turn inward, and they begin to recognize that their own life is a part of this eternal rhythm. Just as Shiva dances the dance of creation, preservation, and destruction, so too do they, through their actions, contribute to the cosmic dance. They realize that every action, every thought, and every movement has an impact on the world, rippling out into the fabric of existence, contributing to the ongoing flow of creation. The devotee comes to understand that their own life is not a separate entity, but part of the grand interconnected dance of the universe, where every being and every moment is linked in a sacred flow. The devotee now feels an overwhelming sense of connection to the divine through Shiva's dance. They begin to see that their actions, no matter how small, are an integral part of this universal rhythm. Just as each step of Shiva's dance contributes to the cosmic balance, so too do the devotee's own steps contribute to the unfolding of creation. The devotee understands that in every moment they are participating in this sacred dance, whether they are engaged in the stillness of meditation, in the work of the world, or in the simple act of living. Each moment is an offering, each action a movement in the grand cosmic rhythm that transcends time and space. Shiva's dance also symbolizes the transcendence of duality. In the Nataraja form, Shiva's foot is raised above the demon of ignorance, representing the triumph of light over darkness, knowledge over ignorance, and life over death. The devotee reflects on how this dance is not just a cosmic force, but a metaphor for their own spiritual journey. The demons of fear, doubt, and attachment are the forces that hold them back from understanding their true nature. But through the dance of devotion, through surrender to Shiva, the devotee realizes that they too can overcome these illusions, rising above them and joining in the divine rhythm of the universe. In the stillness of meditation, the devotee contemplates the meaning of Shiva's third eye, often depicted as being open in the center of his forehead. This eye represents divine perception, the ability to see beyond the illusion of the physical world and into the true nature of existence. The devotee realizes that Shiva's dance is not just about physical movement, but about an inner vision, a vision that transcends the ego and sees the interconnectedness of all things. Through the dance of life, Shiva reveals the truth of existence, that everything is a reflection of the divine, that all creation, preservation and destruction are part of the same eternal cycle. As the devotee reflects on the cosmic dance, they realize that they too are called to dance with Shiva. Their life is a dance, a rhythm of creation and destruction, of joy and sorrow, of growth and release. Each step they take is part of the greater cosmic flow, a flow that is not separate from them, but that they are an integral part of. The devotee sees that to align themselves with this cosmic dance is to live in harmony with the universe, to act in accordance with the divine will, and to recognize the divine presence in every movement of life. The dance of Shiva is also a symbol of surrender. The devotee understands that to truly join in the dance is to let go of control, to release the ego's desire to direct the rhythm of life, and to instead allow oneself to be swept up in the divine flow. Just as Shiva's dance is both wild and graceful, destructive and creative, so too must the devotee embrace the wildness of life, trusting that each step, each movement, is guided by the divine presence. In this surrender, the devotee finds freedom, for they understand that they are not separate from the divine flow, but are an essential part of it. As the chapter concludes, the devotee meditates on the deeper meaning of their place within the cosmic dance. They realize that they are not just a passive observer, but an active participant, shaping the rhythm of creation with each thought, each action, and each breath. The dance of Shiva is not just a cosmic force, it is the very essence of life itself, and the devotee now feels a deep sense of purpose in their participation. They are part of the dance of creation, a sacred rhythm that unites them with Shiva and with the entire universe. With this newfound understanding, the devotee prepares to take the next step on their journey, one that will lead to a deeper alignment with the divine rhythm of existence. The cosmic dance of Shiva, they know, will continue to unfold within them, guiding them toward enlightenment and union with the divine. The dance has begun, and the devotee is ready to move in harmony with the eternal flow of Shiva's sacred movement. Having journeyed far along the path of devotion, the young devotee is now called to undertake a pilgrimage to the sacred Mount Kailash, the abode of Lord Shiva. This mountain, revered in Hindu tradition as the holiest of sites, stands tall and majestic in the Himalayas, untouched by time and untouched by the world. It is said that Mount Kailash is the very center of the universe, the place where the divine and the earthly meet. To journey there is not only a physical pilgrimage but a spiritual quest, a path toward deeper union with Shiva. The devotee, filled with reverence and anticipation, begins their journey at the base of the mountain. The path ahead is long and arduous, winding through steep valleys and rugged terrain, the air thin with the high altitude. But the devotee is undeterred. They understand that this pilgrimage is not just about reaching the summit, but about the purification that takes place with each step, the cleansing of the soul as they leave behind the distractions and attachments of the world. As the devotee ascends the mountain, they are struck by the breathtaking beauty of the landscape. The snow-capped peaks rise like sentinels against the vast expanse of sky, and the landscape is dotted with serene lakes, pristine rivers, and sacred groves. There is a stillness here that is unlike anything the devotee has ever known, an almost otherworldly peace that pervades every rock, every breath of wind. It is as if the mountain itself is alive, imbued with the divine presence of Lord Shiva. But the physical journey is not easy. The higher the devotee climbs, the more challenging the terrain becomes. Their body aches with fatigue, and the air grows colder, thinner, making each breath feel like a conscious effort. Yet with each step, the devotee is reminded that this is not just a journey of the body, but of the spirit. As they climb higher, They leave behind the distractions of the material world, becoming more attuned to the subtle energies of the universe. The body may struggle, but the soul feels lighter, more open to the divine presence that surrounds them. It is during these moments of physical exhaustion that the devotee begins to experience what feels like divine revelations. The mountain, with its towering presence, seems to speak to them in the silence of their heart. In the stillness of the ascent, they realize that this mountain is not just a physical place, but a symbol of the spiritual journey, a journey that is often difficult, filled with obstacles, but ultimately leads to divine union. As the devotee continues, they feel an increasing sense of purification, as if the mountain itself is stripping away the layers of ego, attachment, and illusion that have accumulated over their lifetime. The further they ascend, the more they experience a deepening of their connection to Lord Shiva. The devotee understands now that this pilgrimage is not just a physical act, but a sacred ritual of surrender. They are not merely climbing a mountain, they are climbing toward enlightenment, toward the divine essence that resides within themselves. Each step is an offering to Shiva, each breath a prayer of devotion. The devotee feels Shiva's presence with them, guiding them forward, inspiring them with strength and perseverance. There are moments on the journey when the devotee feels overwhelmed by the grandeur of the mountain, the vastness of the sky, and the purity of the landscape. They pause to reflect, breathing in the cold, crisp air, and realize that this mountain, like the universe itself, is both vast and intimate. It is a space where the divine and the mundane exist in harmony. Every rock, every tree, every snowflake carries the essence of Shiva. They begin to feel the interconnectedness of all things, the sacredness of the natural world, and the deep unity that runs through all of creation. At last, after many days of arduous travel, the devotee reaches the summit of Mount Kailash. They stand at the peak, their body exhausted, but their soul alive with the vibrancy of divine energy. The view from the summit is beyond words, a vast expanse of snow and sky, stretching infinitely in every direction. The sun casts a golden glow over the mountain, and the devotee feels as if they are standing at the very center of the universe, in the presence of Shiva himself. As they stand there in silence, the devotee experiences a moment of divine revelation. In that stillness, they feel a deep sense of unity, not just with the mountain, but with all of existence. They understand now that Shiva is not distant. He is the living energy that flows through everything, from the highest peak to the smallest pebble, from the vastness of the universe to the depths of the human soul. The devotee sees that their own life, like the mountain, is a reflection of this divine energy, constantly changing, evolving and transforming, yet always rooted in the eternal truth of Shiva. In this moment of revelation, the devotee feels the weight of their spiritual journey fall away. They realize that the mountain was not the goal. The goal was the inner transformation that took place along the way. The mountain, with all its challenges and beauty, has revealed to them the sacredness of life, the understanding that every challenge, every struggle, every step on the path is an opportunity to grow closer to the divine. They feel gratitude for the journey, for the purification that took place, and for the divine presence that guided them every step of the way. As the chapter concludes, the devotee begins the descent from the summit, carrying with them the deep wisdom and grace of their experience. The physical journey is coming to an end, but the spiritual journey continues. They know that their time on Mount Kailash has forever changed them, deepening their understanding of the interconnectedness of all things and the infinite presence of Shiva. With each step down the mountain, the devotee feels a growing sense of spiritual wisdom, knowing that the path they walk is not just their own, but part of the vast cosmic dance that has been unfolding since the beginning of time. The journey from Mount Kailash is a new beginning, a new phase in the devotee's spiritual awakening, one that will lead them to an even deeper understanding of Shiva's presence and the eternal cycles of life, death, and rebirth. The sacred mountain has revealed to them the profound truth of existence, and they now carry that truth with them, ready to continue their journey toward divine union. As the devotee's journey progresses, they find themselves drawn toward a new and subtle form of practice: silence. Having experienced the power of mantra, the rhythm of breath, and the sacred rituals, they now seek to understand the deeper wisdom found in quietude. In their meditations and prayers, they come to realize that Lord Shiva, often depicted as a silent meditator, holds a profound lesson within the stillness of his silence. Shiva, in his eternal meditation, represents not just the energy of creation, preservation, and destruction, but the divine essence of peace and stillness. It is said that Shiva's silence is the true source of all sound, all vibration, the cosmic hum of the universe, the vibration of existence itself. The devotee begins to understand that silence is not emptiness, but the space of divine presence, where all things originate and return. In Shiva's silence, the devotee sees a reflection of the deepest truths, that the divine does not need words, does not need explanation, for it resides in the quiet heart of every living being. The devotee decides to dedicate time to cultivating silence, moving away from the noise and distractions of daily life, creating space for the whispers of the universe. They find a quiet place, away from the hustle of the world, where the only sounds are the soft rustling of leaves and the distant calls of birds. Here, in this space of stillness, they close their eyes and begin to listen, not just with the ears, but with the soul. At first, the mind resists. Thoughts rush in, like waves crashing against the shore. Memories, desires, worries, and distractions that pull the devotee away from the stillness. The devotee becomes aware of the restlessness of the mind, a mind that is so accustomed to noise and activity, to the constant need for stimulation and engagement. But in the silence, the devotee understands that the mind is not the self, but a tool that can either cloud or clear the way to the divine. Through practice, they learn to gently observe their thoughts, letting them come and go like passing clouds, without attaching to them. As the devotee sits in silence, they begin to notice something profound. There is a whisper, faint at first, but unmistakable. It is not a voice, not a sound, but a presence, an energy that fills the space with peace. This presence, they realize, is Shiva's embrace. It is not an external force, but an inner knowing, a divine current that flows through them when they quiet the mind and allow themselves to be fully present. The devotee feels a deep sense of connection with the universe, a connection that transcends words, thought, or form. In this sacred silence, the devotee experiences moments of deep inner peace, a peace that does not depend on circumstances or the external world. It is a peace that exists in the very fabric of the soul, a peace that flows directly from the divine essence within. Shiva's silence teaches them that the truth of existence cannot be found in external noise or distractions, but in the stillness of the heart. The devotee understands that in silence they are not alone. They are enveloped by the divine presence of Shiva, who resides in the silence between their breaths, in the stillness of their soul. This deep silence brings with it a growing realization of the interconnectedness of all things. The devotee understands that the divine, in its infinite wisdom, speaks not through words, but through the language of the heart, through the quiet whispers of intuition, through the gentle pull of the soul toward truth. In silence, they feel the pulse of the universe, the rhythm of life, death, and rebirth, and they understand that they are an integral part of this cosmic dance. The devotee feels the weight of their own soul's journey, as well as the collective journey of all beings, woven together in the divine tapestry that Shiva continually creates and renews. As the devotee continues to spend time in silence, they begin to understand that silence is a doorway to deeper understanding, to divine revelation. It is in silence that the devotee hears the true voice of the soul, a voice that has been drowned out by the noise of the world. The voice is not loud or forceful. It is soft, gentle, and steady. It is the voice of Shiva within, guiding the devotee toward their true purpose, reminding them of the eternal truth that resides within every living being. The devotee also learns that silence is not the absence of action, but a state of presence. In silence, they are more fully able to listen to the needs of the world, to hear the cries of others, to understand the deeper needs of the soul. Silence, they realize, makes them more attuned to the suffering and joy of others, allowing them to respond with greater compassion and wisdom. Shiva, in his silence, teaches the devotee that true action arises from the heart, and it is only in stillness that the heart can be fully aligned with the divine will. In moments of quiet reflection, the devotee also realizes that silence is a teacher of patience, humility, and surrender. The mind, which once sought to control every situation, is now learning to let go, to trust the divine timing of the universe. The devotee understands that silence is not a passive state, but an active surrender to the divine presence, an opening of the soul to the wisdom that flows from Shiva. They learn to embrace silence as a sacred teacher, knowing that it is in this space that true wisdom is revealed. As the chapter draws to a close, the devotee reflects on the transformative power of silence. It is in silence that they have come to understand the true nature of their soul, the true nature of the universe, and the true nature of Lord Shiva. The devotee now understands that Shiva's embrace is always present, always available, but it is only through silence that they can fully experience it. The journey of silence has opened the door to divine grace, and the devotee knows that this grace will guide them through every challenge, every trial, and every moment of their life. The experience of silence naturally transitions the devotee into the next phase of their spiritual awakening, the exploration of compassion and service. With the peace and wisdom gained through silence, the devotee is now ready to turn outward, using the stillness within to serve others with love and grace. Silence has shown them the true nature of their being, and now it is time to express that truth in action. The journey continues, but now, with a heart full of compassion, the devotee is ready to serve the world with the quiet strength of Shiva's divine presence. Having spent time in silence, deepening their connection with Lord Shiva, the devotee now feels a profound shift in their spiritual journey. Silence has not only brought them closer to the divine, but has also illuminated a deeper calling, a calling to serve others. It is in the stillness of the heart that the devotee realizes that true devotion is not only an inner experience, but is meant to be expressed through compassion and service. Service to others, the devotee understands, is a reflection of Shiva's own love and mercy, a way of embodying the divine presence in the world. The devotee begins to contemplate the nature of compassion. Compassion is not merely pity or sympathy, but a deep, empathetic understanding of the suffering of others. It is a state of being that recognizes the divinity within all beings, and in seeing this divinity, acts with kindness, humility, and mercy. Compassion, the devotee learns, is the heart of bhakti, the path of devotion. It is the outward expression of the love they feel for Shiva, and it becomes a natural part of their daily life. With this newfound understanding, the devotee makes compassion a core aspect of their practice. Every day, they look for opportunities to serve their community, offering small acts of kindness wherever they can. They begin to help their neighbors, the elderly, the sick, and the poor. They offer a listening ear, a helping hand, or a meal to someone in need. These acts of service, though simple, become powerful expressions of Shiva's love flowing through them. They realize that each act of kindness, no matter how small, is a form of worship, a way of honoring the divine presence in every living being. The devotee also learns that humility is a key component of true service. As they serve others, they do not do so from a place of superiority or expectation of reward. Instead, they offer their service selflessly, recognizing that in every person they help, they are serving Shiva himself. Lord Shiva, the cosmic lord of creation, destruction and preservation, embodies the ultimate humility, living not in grand palaces but in the forests, on mountaintops, and in the hearts of all beings. The devotee strives to emulate this humility, knowing that true service is born from a heart free of ego. As the devotee's daily life becomes infused with service, they notice a profound change within themselves. The acts of kindness, charity, and humility become a way of purification. Each time they help another, they feel the attachment to their own ego dissolving just a little bit more. The more they serve, the more they realize that service is not about what they give, but about what they receive. Through service, they are not only helping others, but purifying their own heart and mind, releasing the stains of selfishness and pride. Each act of service becomes a form of spiritual purification, a cleansing of the soul, allowing more of Shiva's grace to flow through them. The devotee reflects on the teachings of Shiva, who is both the protector and the compassionate destroyer. Shiva's actions are always motivated by love, whether in his role as the destroyer of ignorance or the preserver of all life. Through his divine mercy, Shiva guides all beings toward liberation, never turning away from those in need. The devotee comes to understand that to serve others is to channel this divine love and mercy to be an instrument of Shiva's grace in the world. They realize that compassionate service is an extension of divine grace, and through it, they can help alleviate the suffering of others and contribute to the healing of the world. As the devotee serves, they also recognize that every person they help is a reflection of Shiva. They begin to see the divine presence in every face, in every person they meet. Whether the person is joyful or suffering, rich or poor, their soul is a reflection of the same divine essence that flows through the devotee. This understanding deepens their sense of empathy and compassion as they see beyond the external differences and recognize the universal spirit within all beings. The devotee understands that to serve another is to serve Shiva himself, and in doing so, they deepen their connection to the divine. Service, the devotee learns, is not limited to physical acts of kindness. It is also a mental and emotional offering, a way of offering their thoughts and intentions to the divine. They begin to cultivate compassionate thoughts, sending love and healing to those who are suffering, whether they are physically present or far away. They recognize that the mind, like the body, can be a vessel of service. By offering positive thoughts and prayers for others, they continue to align themselves with Shiva's divine will. The chapter also highlights the profound joy that comes from serving others. While in the past, the devotee may have thought of service as a duty or obligation, they now understand it as a source of spiritual fulfillment. The more they serve, the more they feel a sense of purpose, a sense of connection to something greater than themselves. They experience a deep satisfaction in knowing that their actions, no matter how small, are contributing to the well-being of others and the world as a whole. This joy, the devotee realizes, is a reflection of the divine love that flows through them when they act from the heart. As the chapter comes to a close, the devotee reflects on the growing sense of spiritual wisdom they have gained through service. They see that through their acts of compassion, they are not only helping others, but are also learning to see the world through Shiva's eyes. Eyes filled with love, mercy, and understanding. Service, they now understand, is a path to self-realization, as it teaches them to release the ego, to surrender to the divine will, and to live in alignment with the sacred rhythm of the universe. With a heart full of love and a mind focused on divine service, the devotee is now ready to take the next step in their spiritual journey. The practice of compassion and service will continue to guide them as they move toward a deeper understanding of the divine within all beings and the profound interconnectedness of all life. In the act of loving and serving others, the devotee discovers that the path of devotion is not a solitary journey, but one that involves all beings, intertwined in the dance of Shiva's divine grace. As the devotee's journey continues, a new insight begins to unfold, one that deepens their understanding of Shiva's presence in the world. Having cultivated compassion and engaged in selfless service, they now begin to see that the divine is not limited to temples, rituals, or moments of meditation. It pervades everything, every person they meet, every tree they pass, every star that lights the night sky. The realization comes gently as the devotee begins to see Shiva everywhere, in the smallest and grandest aspects of life. The devotee understands that Lord Shiva, as the ultimate source of creation, is not confined to a single form or place. He is the infinite presence that permeates all beings, both seen and unseen, within and beyond the universe. This understanding of divinity as all-encompassing is not a distant concept, but a lived experience. The devotee begins to feel the divine in the rhythm of their own breath, in the beating of their heart, and in the vibrant world around them. They come to understand that every encounter, every interaction, is an opportunity to connect with Shiva. The people they meet, whether loved ones, strangers, or even those who challenge them, are all manifestations of the divine. They are reflections of Shiva's energy, walking expressions of love, grace, and transformation. As the devotee practices this awareness, they find that the walls of separation between themselves and others begin to dissolve. The person they once viewed as an other is now seen as part of the sacred unity of existence, an extension of Shiva's presence. This newfound awareness begins to change how the devotee interacts with the world. They see the divine in the faces of those they serve, each person's struggles and joys, reflecting Shiva's dance of creation and destruction. The devotee begins to listen more deeply to the needs of others, seeing them as expressions of Shiva's will. Whether they are offering a meal, a smile, or a word of kindness, the devotee understands that these actions are not just deeds, but sacred offerings made in reverence to the divine presence in everyone they meet. The divine is also present in the natural world, the devotee realizes. Every blade of grass, every mountain peak, every river flowing through the earth is infused with Shiva's essence. The world around them is not separate from the divine, but a manifestation of the divine's endless creativity. The devotee begins to see that the natural world is not just a place to exist, but a living temple, an ongoing creation, where every element, the wind, the earth, the sun, speaks of Shiva's infinite wisdom and power. In quiet moments of reflection, the devotee sits in stillness, surrounded by the beauty of nature. They gaze at the sunset, watching as the colors of the sky shift and change, and they feel the presence of Shiva in the transformation. As the sun sets and the stars begin to appear, the devotee contemplates the cyclical nature of the universe, recognizing that creation and destruction are occurring simultaneously, just as in Shiva's cosmic dance. They begin to understand that life itself is a living, breathing reflection of the divine, constantly evolving, changing, and renewing in perfect harmony. The devotee begins to see the world as a reflection of divine unity, where all beings, all actions, and all things are interconnected. They understand that every moment of life, every thought, every gesture is part of the eternal flow of Shiva's cosmic rhythm. Nothing is separate from the divine. Everything is an expression of the same energy, the same consciousness. The boundaries that once seemed to divide them from others, the distinctions between self and other, human and nature, begin to fade as the devotee recognizes that they are not separate from the world, but an integral part of it. This insight is particularly powerful when the devotee encounters suffering. In the past, they may have felt a sense of helplessness or frustration in the face of pain, either their own or that of others. But now, seeing the divine in all things, the devotee understands that suffering is also a form of transformation, an essential part of the dance of life. Shiva, as both the creator and the destroyer, is present in both joy and sorrow, in both birth and death. The devotee sees that every experience, whether of pain or pleasure, is part of the sacred unfolding of existence. Compassion flows more freely from their heart, for they now see suffering not as an obstacle to be avoided, but as an opportunity for healing and growth. The realization of interconnectedness deepens the devotee's sense of responsibility. They know now that every action they take has an impact on the whole. The care they give to the earth, to the people they encounter, and to their own spirit is a reflection of their reverence for the divine. Each thought, word, and deed is an extension of Shiva's love, and the devotee seeks to act in harmony with this divine energy. With this understanding, the devotee also begins to realize that true devotion is not about seeking the divine in isolated moments of prayer or ritual, but about seeing the divine in all things, at all times. To truly love Shiva is to recognize that Shiva is not found only in temples or sacred spaces, but in every face, in every moment, in every breath. The devotee now sees their life itself as a sacred offering, an opportunity to serve and honor the divine in all its forms. The chapter closes with the devotee meditating on this profound realization, that everything is part of the divine dance of Shiva, from the smallest atom to the largest galaxy, from the deepest sorrow to the greatest joy. They understand now that the world is not a place to escape, but a sacred space to engage with, a space where they can meet Shiva in every being, every moment, and every encounter. This deeper understanding of the divine in all things sets the stage for the next phase of the devotee's journey, one that will lead them to even greater spiritual wisdom and realization. With their heart open to the divine presence in the world, they are ready to move forward on their path, knowing that each step is a sacred dance, a reflection of Shiva's eternal rhythm. After years of devotion, service, and inner reflection, the devotee reaches a profound turning point in their spiritual journey, a moment of divine union with Lord Shiva. The path has been long and filled with many revelations, but none as transformative as this. It is a moment of pure transcendence, where the lines between self and the divine, between individual soul and the cosmic consciousness, begin to dissolve. This moment is not one of external spectacle, but an internal, silent awakening. It is in the quietest of moments, during deep meditation, that the devotee begins to sense something profound shifting within. It is as though the very fabric of existence has been pulled back, revealing the vast, unchanging essence of the divine. For the first time, they feel not just a connection to Lord Shiva, but an identification with him. The distinction between themselves and Shiva fades, and in its place, they experience the deep knowing that their true nature is the same as Shiva's. As the devotee sinks deeper into this experience, they feel the presence of Shiva within their very being. It is not an abstract feeling, but a tangible presence, a sensation that floods every cell of their body. The divine energy of Lord Shiva flows through them like a wave of light, expanding their awareness beyond the limits of the physical body and mind. In this sacred union, they no longer feel like an individual striving to reach the divine, but an embodiment of the divine itself. The ego, the false self, the limited identity they had carried for so long, seems to evaporate in the presence of Shiva's infinite essence. In that moment, the devotee understands that Shiva's essence is the essence of all things, the source of creation, preservation and destruction, the underlying energy of the universe. They experience the bliss of oneness with this cosmic force, a profound peace that transcends thought, time, and space. It is not a fleeting experience, but a state of being, one in which the devotee realizes that they have always been connected to the divine, even in moments of doubt or confusion. The separation they once felt was only an illusion, a veil that has now been lifted. The blissful realization that they are, in essence, Shiva himself, fills the devotee's heart with a peace unlike any they have known before. It is the peace of knowing that all things are interconnected, that the divine resides within and around them at all times. This experience of union is not just spiritual but deeply physical as well. Each breath they take is felt as a sacred offering, each heartbeat a reminder of the divine rhythm that beats through all of existence. The devotee now sees that they are not separate from the world around them, but a part of the living, breathing presence of Shiva. As the experience of union deepens, the devotee begins to understand that the true self is not the body, the mind, or the ego, but the eternal soul that is always connected to the divine. They realize that their identity has always been an expression of Shiva, that the soul they have long sought to understand is not a fragment of the divine, but the divine essence itself. The devotee understands that the journey they have undertaken was never about reaching a distant goal, but about recognizing the truth that has always been within them. Shiva has never been far away, but has always resided within their own heart, guiding them with love, grace, and wisdom. In this divine union, the devotee experiences a profound peace, a peace that does not depend on external circumstances, but comes from the realization that the soul is always in union with the divine. The body may age, the mind may change, and the world may shift, but the essence of the soul remains eternal, untouched by the transient nature of life. The devotee understands that this moment of union with Shiva is not a one-time event, but the truth of their being. They carry this peace with them now, knowing that the divine presence is always within, always guiding, always present. The experience of union with Shiva also brings with it a deep sense of compassion. In the embrace of Shiva, the devotee sees that all beings, all lives, are expressions of the same divine energy. The love and mercy that Shiva embodies are not limited to a select few, but are extended to all of creation. The devotee's heart swells with a desire to share this divine love with the world, to serve others from a place of deep connection to the divine within them. They now see that the path of service is not just a duty, but a sacred expression of the love and grace they have received from Shiva. As the chapter draws to a close, the devotee sits in quiet contemplation of this profound experience. They reflect on the nature of the soul, its eternal connection to the divine, its journey through life, and its eventual return to the source of all things. The devotee now understands that the soul is not bound by the limitations of time or space, but is part of the vast, unchanging consciousness of Shiva. This realization fills them with both awe and humility, as they recognize that they are but one expression of the infinite, one note in the eternal song of the universe. With this deep understanding, the devotee prepares to move into the next phase of their spiritual journey, a phase that will take them even further into the mysteries of the soul, the universe, and the divine. The union with Shiva has opened a door to deeper wisdom, and the devotee is ready to walk through it, knowing that with each step, they are growing closer to the truth of their divine nature. The experience of oneness has set the stage for an even greater spiritual awakening, one that will lead the devotee into the depths of the soul and the heart of Shiva's cosmic role. As the devotee's journey deepens, they now find themselves drawn to a more profound understanding of the nature of the soul. After experiencing the union with Shiva, a new wave of realization begins to dawn, one that transcends the personal and touches on the universal. The devotee meditates on the teachings of Advaita Vedanta, the philosophy of non-duality, which reveals the ultimate truth that the Atman, the individual soul, is not separate from Brahman, the universal consciousness, the divine source of all existence. In their moments of reflection, the devotee begins to realize that the soul they have long sought to understand, the self they have always identified with, is not a fragmented individual entity, but part of the infinite and eternal essence that is Brahman. Brahman, the formless, infinite source of all life and existence, is not a distant reality, but the very fabric of the universe itself. The devotee begins to understand that the soul, Atman, is not separate from Brahman. It is an extension of the same divine consciousness, always present, always one with the divine. This understanding comes as a revelation, a moment where the devotee feels the deep interconnectedness of all things. Just as Shiva's presence resides in everything, so too does Brahman pervade all of existence. The devotee begins to grasp that their individual self, the I that once seemed so distinct and separate, is merely a temporary expression of the eternal Atman, which is, in essence, one with Brahman. They begin to see that the apparent separation between themselves and others, between the individual soul and the universal consciousness, is an illusion, a veil created by the mind, which is now ready to be lifted. The devotee meditates on the Advaita Vedanta philosophy, which teaches that there is no true distinction between the individual soul, Atman, and the ultimate reality, Brahman. Atman and Brahman are one. They are the same essence, manifested in different forms. The devotee recalls the ancient teachings of the Upanishads, which proclaim Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art. This sacred mantra reveals the truth that the individual soul is not separate from the divine. It is the divine itself. The devotee begins to experience this truth, realizing that the separation they once felt between themselves and Shiva was never real. They have always been one with Shiva, one with Brahman, one with the eternal source of all things. In these moments of profound meditation, the devotee feels the depth of this realization. They experience a deep, inner peace that transcends the limitations of the body and mind. The understanding of the non-duality of Atman and Brahman fills them with a sense of unity not just with Shiva, but with all of existence. They begin to see that everything in the universe, every living being, every object, every moment, is a manifestation of the same divine essence. There is no division, no separation. All is Brahman, and all is interconnected in the vast web of divine consciousness. The devotee then feels a profound release as the boundaries of the self dissolve. They no longer cling to the idea of a separate, individual self. Instead, they understand that the self is an expression of the infinite, and in realizing this, they experience a profound sense of liberation. They are no longer bound by the limitations of the body or the mind, for they have come to understand that these are merely transient forms, temporary expressions of the eternal Atman. The devotee sees that the body is not the self, nor are the thoughts, feelings, or experiences that arise within the mind. The true self, the Atman, is beyond these things. It is pure consciousness, Brahman itself, ever present and unchanging. In this deep realization of the soul's true nature, the devotee begins to understand that death is not the end of the self, but simply a transformation. Since the Atman is eternal, beyond birth and death, it cannot be destroyed. The body may perish, the mind may fade, but the soul remains untouched by time, unchanged by the fluctuations of the material world. The devotee feels a deep sense of immortality, not as a concept or belief, but as a direct experience of the soul's eternal essence. This understanding frees them from the fear of death, for they know that they are not the body, but the infinite Atman, which is always one with Brahman. As the devotee reflects on the nature of the soul, they are filled with a profound sense of humility. They realize that all beings, whether human, animal, or plant, are expressions of the same divine essence. Every soul, every form of life, is a reflection of Brahman. The devotee begins to feel an even deeper sense of compassion for all living beings, knowing that they are not separate from them, but intimately connected to them through the divine essence that flows through all things. This realization softens the heart, expanding the devotee's capacity for love, empathy, and service. The realization that Atman and Brahman are one is not just a theoretical understanding but a lived experience. The devotee begins to feel this truth in every fiber of their being. They sense the divine presence in every breath, every heartbeat, and every thought. They understand that Shiva's essence resides within them, and that through their devotion and surrender, they have come to recognize this eternal truth. The devotee feels a sense of gratefulness for this insight, knowing that the path they have walked, through silence, through service, through surrender, has led them to this moment of deep spiritual realization. As the chapter closes, the devotee sits in quiet contemplation of the nature of the soul. They understand that the soul is not bound by time or space, that it is one with the eternal. This realization of the unity of Atman and Brahman marks a new stage in their spiritual journey, one where they no longer identify with the limitations of the body and mind, but with the infinite consciousness that transcends all forms. The devotee knows that they are now ready to move into the final stages of their spiritual awakening, where they will experience the fullness of union with the divine, knowing that they have always been one with Shiva. The realization of the eternal soul sets the stage for the devotee's next step, a journey toward complete liberation and oneness with the divine. The truth of Advaita Vedanta, that Atman is Brahman, now illuminates their path, guiding them toward the ultimate union with Shiva, the source of all creation. As the devotee's understanding of the eternal nature of the soul deepens, they are drawn into a more profound contemplation, the impermanence of the physical body. Until now, their identity had been closely tied to the body, the mind, and the world around them. But as they delve into the realization that the Atman, the true self, is not the body, they begin to experience a profound shift in their perception. The body, they now understand, is not the self, but a temporary vessel for the eternal soul. The devotee meditates on the nature of the body, seeing it as a transient form that is subject to the cycles of birth, aging, decay, and death. They begin to realize that the body, with its physical limitations, is not the true essence of who they are. It is an instrument that serves the soul for a brief period, but it is not the core of their being. The devotee reflects on the fact that the body is constantly changing. Cells regenerate, organs grow weaker, and the body inevitably ages. Despite its changes, the soul remains untouched, constant, and eternal. In this realization, the devotee experiences a deep sense of detachment from the physical self. They begin to see the body not as an identity to protect or cling to, but as a vessel to be used wisely and responsibly during its time on earth. The body is a tool for spiritual growth, but it is not the essence of who they are. The devotee's attachment to the body begins to dissolve, and with it, the fear of aging, illness, and death. They understand that these are natural processes, but they are not the end of the soul. The body will one day return to the earth, but the soul will continue its journey, unchanged and eternal. This deep understanding of the impermanence of the body brings with it a sense of inner peace. The devotee no longer feels the need to identify with the body or to protect it at all costs. They realize that the body is simply a temporary form that houses the eternal soul, and it will eventually fade away, as all physical things do. This realization helps the devotee transcend the fear of death, the fear of loss, and the fear of physical suffering. They know that true freedom lies in the recognition that the soul is beyond the body, unaffected by the passing of time and the decay of form. The devotee contemplates the teachings of Lord Shiva, who transcends the physical body and embodies the eternal, formless presence of Brahman. Shiva, in his divine essence, is beyond the limitations of the body. His form may take many shapes, whether as the ascetic meditating in the mountains, as Nataraja performing the cosmic dance, or as the divine family man with Parvati and his children. But these forms are not the true essence of Shiva. The devotee sees that Shiva, in his formless state, is not bound by any material reality. He exists beyond time, beyond space, and beyond the physical world. This understanding deepens the devotee's sense of the divine's eternal, unchanging nature, which is not dependent on physical form. As the devotee reflects on the illusory nature of the physical self, they experience a sense of liberation. The ego, which once identified itself so strongly with the body, begins to lose its grip. The devotee understands that their true self is the eternal soul, the Atman, connected to Brahman, the divine consciousness. The body may suffer, it may age, it may die, but the soul remains unchanged and imperishable. This realization brings a deep sense of inner peace, as the devotee no longer fears the inevitable changes that come with the physical body. The devotee begins to cultivate a sense of detachment from the material world. They understand that the possessions, the titles, the social roles, and the identities they once clung to are all part of the illusion of the physical world. These things are temporary, subject to change and decay, but the soul, their true essence, is eternal. With this newfound perspective, the devotee feels a deep freedom from the pressures of the material world, from the attachments to fleeting desires, and from the fear of loss. They are no longer bound by the need to accumulate possessions, seek external validation, or chase after worldly pleasures. Instead, they focus on the eternal, on the soul's journey, and on the realization that true fulfillment comes from within. In this quiet realization, the devotee experiences a profound sense of stillness, a stillness that is not just the absence of noise, but a deep alignment with the divine. The body, with its aches, its desires, and its limitations, is no longer seen as the source of their identity. Instead, the devotee identifies with the eternal soul, the unchanging essence that is one with Shiva. This stillness is not passive or detached, but an active presence of divine awareness in every moment. The devotee feels that they are no longer bound by the constraints of the physical world, but are free to move within it with grace and understanding, knowing that their true self is beyond form. The body, the devotee realizes, is simply a vehicle for spiritual growth, a means through which the soul can experience and learn from the material world. But it is not the ultimate goal. The true purpose of life, they now understand, is to realize the divine essence within, to recognize that the soul is one with Shiva, and to live from this place of inner truth and peace. The body is a temporary vessel, but the soul is eternal, and it is the soul that ultimately connects them to the divine. As the chapter draws to a close, the devotee sits in contemplation of this profound realization, the impermanence of the body, the eternal nature of the soul, and the freedom that comes from recognizing the truth of their being. This realization is not the end, but a new beginning, a deeper understanding of their spiritual journey. The devotee is now ready to move forward into the final stages of their spiritual awakening, where they will experience even greater union with Shiva and a more profound realization of their true self. The body may fade, but the soul remains, forever one with the eternal essence of the divine. As the devotee's spiritual journey reaches its culmination, they encounter a challenge, unlike any they have faced before, a final test that will push the limits of their understanding and devotion. This test is not one of external trials or physical obstacles, but of an inner nature, a test of attachment. While the devotee has journeyed through many stages of self-realization, the attachment to the material world still lingers, albeit in subtle ways. This test is one of releasing the final remnants of desire and attachment, truly embracing non-attachment as Lord Shiva has taught. The devotee is faced with external circumstances that seem to be designed to test their resolve. Perhaps it is a loss, a loved one, a home, or a cherished possession. Perhaps it is a challenge to their reputation, or a sudden change in their life's path. Whatever the cause, the devotee finds themselves confronted with situations that bring up feelings of loss, fear, and uncertainty. In these moments, the mind and emotions are stirred, and the devotee feels the pull of attachment, the very thing they have worked so hard to transcend. It is here, in the face of loss, that the devotee is asked to reflect deeply on Shiva's teachings of non-attachment. Shiva, the Lord of ascetics, has shown that true freedom lies not in clinging to the material world, but in releasing attachment to outcomes, to possessions, and to even relationships. While Shiva is deeply compassionate and engaged with the world, he remains unattached. His heart and soul are free from the chains of desire. The devotee recalls the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, "You have the right to perform your prescribed duties, but you are not entitled to the fruits of your actions." In these words, the devotee understands that the true essence of non-attachment is not about renouncing the world, but about renouncing the desire for results. It is not about avoiding relationships, possessions, or achievements, but about letting go of the attachment to these things as sources of personal identity, happiness, or fulfillment. As the devotee reflects on this teaching, they begin to see that their attachment to the material world has been rooted in the belief that these things are essential to their identity and sense of purpose. The loss of these things causes suffering, not because the objects themselves hold intrinsic value, but because the mind has become attached to the idea that they define who the devotee is. The devotee begins to understand that this attachment is rooted in illusion, the false belief that the self is bound by external circumstances. In their meditation, the devotee turns inward, observing the rise of desire and fear that accompanies the threat of loss. They notice the grasping instinct that seeks to hold on to what they have, the fear of letting go, and the deep emotional attachment that brings suffering. But with each moment of awareness, they also begin to sense something deeper, a quiet, unwavering presence within. This presence is the Atman, the true self, which is beyond attachment, beyond loss, and beyond desire. They realize that while the body and mind may experience change, the true self remains eternal and untouched. The devotee contemplates the example of Lord Shiva, who, despite his immense power and cosmic role, remains detached from the world. Shiva's form as the ascetic sitting in meditation on Mount Kailash, indifferent to worldly distractions, is not a rejection of the world, but a reminder of the ultimate truth, that the self is not bound by the material. Shiva teaches that while one may engage with the world in service, love, and compassion, true freedom comes from non-attachment, the ability to act without being attached to the results or outcomes. As the devotee processes this wisdom, they feel a profound sense of peace settling over them. The attachment they once felt to worldly possessions, achievements, and relationships begins to loosen its grip. They see that the world is a temporary reflection of the divine, constantly changing and shifting, and that clinging to it as if it is permanent causes suffering. In this moment, the the devotee experiences a deep sense of liberation, as if a heavy burden has been lifted from their shoulders. The fear of loss dissipates, replaced by an understanding that true fulfillment lies within, in the recognition of the eternal soul that is one with Shiva. The final test is not about external circumstances, but about the devotee's ability to release attachment, to surrender to the divine will, and to accept the impermanence of life. Whether they are faced with the loss of a loved one, a dream, or a possession, the devotee now understands that nothing external can define their true nature. They are eternal, a manifestation of the divine consciousness of Shiva, and no external event can alter this truth. In this moment of realization, the devotee feels a deep sense of gratitude for the experiences of the material world. They no longer view the world with longing or fear, but with a sense of acceptance and peace. Everything, they realize, is part of the divine flow of life, a dance of creation and destruction that Shiva orchestrates. They can now move through the world with grace, knowing that they are free from the chains of attachment, free from the fear of loss, and free to experience life as it unfolds. As the chapter concludes, the devotee prepares for the final stages of their spiritual awakening. The test of attachment has been met with clarity and surrender, and they now move forward with a deeper sense of inner peace and divine wisdom. They understand that the true goal of their journey is not the accumulation of wealth, power, or even relationships, but the realization of their oneness with Shiva, the eternal source of all creation. The devotee is now ready for the final stages of enlightenment, where they will experience the ultimate union with the divine beyond the illusions of the material world. Having journeyed through the many stages of devotion, surrender, and self-discovery, the devotee now stands on the precipice of the final awakening, the realization of the divine truth that has always been within them. The body, the mind, and the ego no longer define them, for they have come to understand that their true nature is eternal, formless, and one with the infinite consciousness of Shiva. This moment is not just a culmination of years of spiritual practice. It is the moment of enlightenment, where the devotee experiences the ecstatic realization of the unity of all things, the oneness with Shiva, and the dissolution of all illusions. The devotee sits in deep meditation, the world around them fading into the background. As the mind grows still, there is a shift in perception, a sudden clarity, as if a veil has been lifted. For the first time, the devotee sees the truth clearly. They are not separate from the divine. They are the divine. There is no other outside of them. There is only Shiva, and they are one with him. This realization does not come as a thought or idea, but as an immediate experience, the deepest knowing that transcends all concepts. They are the eternal soul, the Atman, connected to Brahman, the infinite divine essence that flows through all of existence. In this moment, the devotee feels an overwhelming sense of oneness with the entire universe. They see themselves in the mountains, in the rivers, in the sky, in the stars. Everything around them, whether animate or inanimate, is a manifestation of the same divine energy that flows through their own soul. The distinction between self and other, between the observer and the observed, disappears. The devotee understands that the universe is not separate from themselves, but a living, breathing expression of Shiva, an eternal dance of creation, preservation, and destruction. They are not merely in the universe. They are the universe, one with all things, beyond time and space. This state of oneness is not merely a realization, but a deep ecstatic experience that fills the devotee with an indescribable sense of joy, peace, and love. They are no longer constrained by the limitations of the body or the mind. The ego, which once clung to identities and desires, dissolves. leaving only the pure consciousness of the soul. The devotee feels free, free from the chains of attachment, free from the fear of loss or death, free from the endless cycle of birth and rebirth. In this moment, they realize that they are beyond all dualities, beyond good and bad, beyond joy and sorrow, beyond creation and destruction. They are the eternal witness, the unmanifested consciousness that watches the play of the universe without being affected by it. The devotee now experiences the ultimate truth. The self is Shiva, and Shiva is the self. There is no distinction between the individual soul and the divine. The lines between the two blur and vanish, and what remains is the pure consciousness that is eternal and unchanging. This understanding fills the devotee with immense bliss, a bliss that is not fleeting, but timeless, for it is rooted in the immovable truth of their oneness with Shiva. In this state of enlightenment, the devotee feels as if they are part of something far greater than themselves, something infinite and beyond comprehension, and yet at the same time, they are one with it. This realization of oneness is also a revelation of love, the love of Shiva that flows through all beings and all things. The devotee understands that love is not just an emotion or feeling, but the very essence of the divine. It is the force that connects all things, the energy that flows through creation, sustaining and nurturing it. The devotee feels this love in every fiber of their being, and they realize that love is not separate from them, but is the very nature of who they are. They are Shiva's love, manifest in human form, experiencing the world through the lens of divine compassion and grace. In this moment of enlightenment, the devotee no longer sees themselves as separate from others. They see Shiva in everyone they meet, their family, their friends, strangers, even those who may have caused them pain. The walls of separation that once defined their perception of others dissolve. They see that everyone is a reflection of Shiva, and this realization fills them with unconditional love for all beings, regardless of their form or circumstances. The devotee is no longer bound by the dualities of attraction and repulsion, but sees all beings as expressions of the divine, worthy of love and compassion. The chapter also explores the transcendence of the mind in this state of enlightenment. The mind, once a tool for perceiving and interpreting the world, now becomes still, like a calm lake reflecting the clarity of the sky. The devotee understands that the mind is not the self, it is simply a vessel for experiencing the world. In this enlightened state, the devotee no longer identifies with their thoughts or emotions. They are the eternal witness to the play of the mind, but they are not affected by it. The silence that follows is profound, for it is the silence of the true self, the silence that exists beyond thought, beyond ego, and beyond the material world. As the chapter draws to a close, the devotee sits in stillness, fully immersed in the realization of their oneness with Shiva. They are no longer seeking or striving, for they have come to understand that the truth they sought has always been within them. They are complete, whole, and at peace, free from the illusions of separation and duality. The final stages of their spiritual awakening are now upon them, and they are prepared to enter the ultimate realization of Shiva's divine nature, the understanding that all of existence, all of creation, is an expression of Shiva's infinite consciousness. The devotee is now ready for the final realization, the truth that will bring them to the culmination of their journey, where they will experience the ultimate oneness with the divine. The path has led them to this moment, where they are free from all illusions, and only the truth of Shiva remains. The journey continues, but now it is a journey into the infinite, a journey into the heart of the divine itself. Having journeyed through the stages of surrender, devotion, detachment, and enlightenment, the devotee now arrives at a profound realization, one that will change the very fabric of their existence. It comes as a divine vision, a glimpse into the heart of Shiva's essence, revealing the interconnectedness of all things. This vision is not a fleeting image, but a life-altering experience, one that shatters all previous notions of self and the world. In this moment, the devotee sees that Shiva is not just within them, but in every single aspect of existence. Shiva is in every breath, in every face, in every leaf and stone, in the sky and the stars. Shiva is not distant, but woven into the very fabric of life. The devotee's meditation deepens, and in the quiet, the vision unfolds. It is as if the veil between the material world and the divine has lifted, and what was once hidden is now revealed. The devotee sees that Shiva's consciousness pervades everything, every person, every creature, every object, every moment. The world around them begins to shine with a new light, and they realize that the divine is present in all things, constantly creating, preserving, and dissolving. What was once perceived as separate is now understood as an expression of Shiva's will, each moment a manifestation of his eternal dance. The devotee's heart is filled with awe as they witness this divine vision. They see Shiva in the faces of those they meet, not as individuals, but as reflections of the divine essence. There is no longer any distinction between them and others, for they now know that everyone is Shiva. Every smile, every gesture, every word is a reflection of the same divine energy. They feel the profound connection to every being, understanding that in truth, there is no other. In every interaction, the devotee now recognizes the eternal presence of Shiva. The same consciousness that flows through them flows through everyone else. The realization fills them with love and compassion, an unconditional love for all beings, born from the understanding that they are not separate, but all one in Shiva. The vision expands, and the devotee now perceives the divinity in nature, in the wind that whispers through the trees, in the rivers that flow with purpose, in the mountains that stand steadfast in their majesty. The devotee understands that the earth itself is a living, breathing manifestation of Shiva's power. Every leaf, every stone, every creature is an expression of the divine will, constantly evolving and changing in the cycle of creation. The devotee no longer sees nature as separate from themselves, but as a sacred reflection of the divine, as if Shiva himself is dancing in every wave of the ocean, in every rustling of leaves, in every rising sun. They feel the deep peace of knowing that all of creation, from the smallest atom to the largest galaxy, is united in this divine dance, always moving in harmony with Shiva's eternal rhythm. As the vision continues, the devotee understands that the true nature of existence is love and unity. Everything, they realize, is interconnected. The universe is not a random collection of separate things, but a coherent whole, woven together by the fabric of divine consciousness. The devotee feels an overwhelming sense of peace, a peace that comes from knowing that everything in the universe is moving toward the same ultimate truth, that all beings are expressions of Shiva, and that all paths lead back to the same source. In this vision, the devotee also sees the impermanence of the material world in a new light. The bodies, the possessions, the structures of the world, all of these are temporary, fleeting expressions of the eternal divine energy. What once seemed so solid and real now appears as a play of forms, each moment a passing expression of Shiva's dance. The devotee is no longer attached to the temporary, but understands that everything is in constant flux, constantly being created and destroyed in the cycle of life. The illusion of permanence vanishes, leaving only the eternal presence of Shiva, ever present and unchanging, behind the changing forms. The divine vision grants the devotee a deep sense of purpose, a realization that their life, like all lives, is part of the cosmic play of Shiva. They are not separate from the universe, but are an integral part of it, a unique expression of the divine consciousness. The devotee now feels a deep sense of responsibility, not in the sense of obligation or duty, but in the sense of being part of something much larger than themselves. They understand that the divine energy they experience within themselves is also present in every being, and it is their role to honor that divine presence through compassion, love, and service. As the vision fades, the devotee is left with an overwhelming sense of oneness and peace. The veil of illusion has been lifted, and they now see the world as it truly is, a divine manifestation of Shiva, where every person, every being, every moment is an expression of the same divine consciousness. The devotee understands that the path of enlightenment is not about attaining something that is separate from them, but about realizing the truth that has always been within, the truth of their unity with Shiva, with all beings, and with the entire universe. The chapter concludes with the devotee sitting in silent contemplation, the vision still alive within their heart. They feel a profound sense of gratitude for this awakening, for this realization of the divine truth. They understand that this vision is not an isolated experience, but a way of seeing the world every moment, every day, recognizing the presence of Shiva in everything they encounter. The vision has granted them a deep sense of purpose and peace, knowing that the ultimate truth of existence is love, unity, and divine consciousness. The devotee is now ready for the final stage of their spiritual journey, a journey that will bring them to the ultimate realization of Shiva's true nature, the essence of creation, destruction, and preservation. This final awakening will lead them to the most profound union with the divine, where they will experience the full realization of their oneness with Shiva, knowing that they have always been one with the eternal. Having experienced the profound union with Shiva and witnessed the divine in all things, the devotee now reaches the final stage of their spiritual journey, a state of timeless awareness that transcends the limitations of the physical world. The realization that the soul is eternal, beyond the cycles of birth and death, brings a deep, unshakable peace. The devotee now comprehends the timeless nature of Lord Shiva and begins to experience life from a higher plane of consciousness, where the concepts of time, birth, and death no longer hold power. The devotee reflects on the cyclical nature of existence, the endless cycles of creation, preservation, and destruction. In their early spiritual practices, these cycles appeared to be separate and unending. They experienced life as a linear progression, bound by the confines of time and the inevitable march of birth and death. But now, through their deepening understanding, the devotee sees that time itself is an illusion, an ephemeral construct that governs only the material world. In truth, they are beyond time, for the soul, the Atman, is eternal, existing in a state of timelessness. In meditation, the devotee begins to experience the stillness that exists beyond the passage of time. They see that time, as they once knew it, is merely a reflection of the external world, a construct of the mind and the senses. The true self, the Atman, remains unaffected by time. It has never been born, and it will never die. The soul is not bound by the linearity of life and death, but exists in a constant state of being, in the eternal now, where there is no past, no future, only the ever-present moment of divine consciousness. The devotee reflects on Shiva's timeless nature. As the Lord of creation and destruction, Shiva exists beyond the limitations of time. He is not bound by the constraints of the material world. He is the eternal witness to the unfolding of the universe, the timeless consciousness that observes all of creation and destruction without being affected by it. Shiva's presence transcends all concepts of time and space, existing both within the universe and beyond it. The devotee understands that they too are one with this timeless essence, for their true self is also Shiva, beyond birth and death, beyond the illusions of time. This realization brings a profound sense of freedom. The devotee understands that they are not the body, which is subject to birth, aging, and death, but the soul, which is eternal and unchanged. The body, the mind, and the experiences they have had are simply temporary expressions of the eternal Atman. The soul, like Shiva, is timeless, existing before creation and continuing beyond the dissolution of the universe. The devotee feels liberated from the fear of death, knowing that the soul cannot be destroyed, that it is always one with the divine. The devotee now lives in a state of eternal awareness, where they no longer perceive time as a series of moments unfolding in a linear fashion. Instead, they experience the world in a state of timelessness. Every moment is an expression of the eternal now. They see that time is not something to be controlled or measured, but something that flows in harmony with the divine order. The past is seen as an echo, the future as a possibility, but the present, the eternal now, is where the devotee's awareness rests. In this state, they are free from the anxieties of what has been and what is yet to come. They are present, fully immersed in the divine flow of life. As the devotee transcends the fear of death, they also begin to see the impermanence of all things in the material world with a sense of peace. Birth and death are no longer seen as ultimate events, but as parts of the same eternal cycle, the dance of creation and destruction. The devotee understands that life is not a journey from birth to death, but a timeless expression of the soul. The soul enters and exits different forms, different bodies, but it never ceases to exist. It simply changes, just as Shiva creates and destroys, always returning to its original state of oneness with Brahman. This realization of the eternal nature of the soul fills the devotee with a profound sense of peace. They understand that the true self is not the body, the mind, or the emotions, but the eternal, unchanging consciousness of the Atman. They are no longer attached to the transient world, for they know that the soul is beyond the limitations of birth and death. The devotee feels free from fear, liberated from the illusion that life's impermanence is something to be avoided or controlled. They accept the natural flow of life and death, knowing that these are simply transitions, not ends, for the soul is eternal and indestructible. The devotee also understands that the ultimate goal of life is not to escape time, but to live in harmony with the eternal. Time itself is part of the divine play, and the devotee now moves through life with a deeper understanding that all things unfold in accordance with the divine will. There is no need to rush, no need to cling to the past or worry about the future. Each moment is a reflection of the divine presence, and the devotee experiences life as a continuous unfolding of Shiva's consciousness, free from the constraints of time and attachment. As the chapter draws to a close, the devotee sits in silent contemplation, fully immersed in the realization that they are beyond birth and death, beyond the fleeting nature of the material world. They are eternal, a timeless expression of Shiva, forever united with the divine consciousness. In this state of eternal awareness, the devotee feels a deep peace and oneness with all of existence. The journey of life and death, creation and dissolution, is no longer something to be feared or resisted, but embraced as part of the infinite divine dance of Shiva. The devotee is now ready to move toward the final stages of their spiritual journey, where they will experience the ultimate union with Shiva, a union that transcends time, space, and form. With each step, they draw closer to the complete realization of their true nature and the infinite truth of Shiva's divine essence. Having traversed the many stages of spiritual awakening, the devotee now stands at the threshold of the highest and most profound realization, the union with the divine, no longer confined by the limitations of the body, mind, or ego. The devotee's consciousness has expanded to encompass the very essence of Shiva. In this moment of divine union, there is no longer any sense of separation. The devotee has become one with the divine source, experiencing an overwhelming sense of infinite peace, wisdom, and love that transcends all understanding. It begins subtly, as a quiet knowing within the heart, a deep and abiding awareness that the separation between self and Shiva has dissolved completely. In meditation, the devotee feels a surrender, a total letting go, as if merging into the vast, infinite expanse of Shiva's consciousness. There is no longer a devotee striving to reach Shiva, no longer a sense of otherness. There is only the eternal dance of creation, and the devotee is one with it, part of the rhythm of the universe itself. As this union deepens, the devotee begins to experience a bliss that defies description, a bliss that is not dependent on any external circumstances, but is the very essence of their being. They are filled with infinite peace, a peace that exists beyond the fluctuations of the mind and the body. The eternal soul, the Atman, has merged with Brahman, the cosmic consciousness of Shiva. In this moment, the devotee no longer seeks or desires anything, for they know that they are complete, whole, and one with the divine. This union with Shiva is not just a metaphysical concept, but a living experience. The devotee feels the divine energy coursing through every fiber of their being, a radiant presence that fills them with wisdom beyond words. There is no longer any distinction between the self and the universe. They see that all of existence, every form, every experience, every thought, is an expression of Shiva's divine essence. The devotee is no longer the individual who sought liberation. They have become the embodiment of Shiva itself. In this state of union, the devotee experiences an infinite love, a love that encompasses all beings and all things. There is no longer any division between self and other, for the devotee understands that all are one in the divine play of Shiva. The unconditional love that fills their being is not limited by time, space, or form. It is the love of the universe itself, the love that sustains all creation, the love that flows through every moment of existence. The devotee feels this love as the very fabric of their being, and they realize that this love is not only within them, but is the essence of everything around them. They are no longer seeking love, for they have become love itself. As the divine union unfolds, the devotee understands that this oneness and with Shiva is the realization of their true nature. The Atman is the same as Brahman. The individual soul is one with the universal consciousness. They no longer see themselves as separate from the world, but as an integral part of the eternal dance of creation, preservation, and destruction that Shiva orchestrates. The devotee sees Shiva in everything, in every being, in every atom of existence. There is no longer any distinction between the divine and the material. Everything is a manifestation of Shiva's will, and the devotee, in their deepest self, is that will. This union with Shiva also brings with it a deep understanding of the cycle of life, the eternal rhythm of creation, preservation, and dissolution. The devotee now sees that life and death, birth and rebirth, are not separate, but part of the same divine process. Shiva, in his role as both creator and destroyer, is the force behind the ongoing cycles of existence. The devotee recognizes that their own life is but a single expression in the vast, ever-changing play of creation, and that death is not an end, but a transformation, a return to the infinite source. They understand that they are eternal, ever-present, and beyond the limitations of time and space. As the devotee moves through this divine experience, they begin to feel a deep humility. The experience of becoming one with Shiva is not one of arrogance or pride, but of profound humility. The devotee understands that their true self has always been one with Shiva, and that they are simply a reflection of the divine play that unfolds in every moment. They no longer see themselves as separate from the divine. They are Shiva, expressing itself in a unique form, but always in harmony with the eternal whole. The devotee's heart is filled with gratitude for this moment of divine union, knowing that this realization is the culmination of all their previous steps on the spiritual path. It has not been a journey of gaining or attaining, but a journey of remembering their true nature as one with Shiva, beyond time, beyond form, beyond death. The devotee knows that they have always been one with the divine, and that this union is not a destination, but the realization of what has always been. As the chapter draws to a close, the devotee sits in deep silence, feeling the fullness of their union with Shiva. They no longer strive, no longer seek, no longer wish to attain anything. They are at one with the divine, with the universe, with the eternal truth. In this silence, the devotee prepares for the final stage of their spiritual awakening, the realization of Shiva's ultimate nature, a nature that is beyond words, beyond thought, beyond form. This final realization will bring them to the ultimate understanding of the divine, where they will experience the fullness of Shiva's infinite consciousness. The journey is now nearing its end, as the devotee steps into the final realization of the eternal union with Shiva, knowing that this union is not an end, but the beginning of an infinite cycle of divine consciousness, peace, and love. Having reached the pinnacle of spiritual realization, where they experience the ultimate union with Shiva, the devotee now faces the final transition in their journey, the return to the world. However, this return is not a simple re-entry into the world of duality and separation. It is the return of the enlightened soul, fully aware of its oneness with Shiva and the entire universe. The devotee returns not as a separate being, but as an embodiment of Shiva's grace and wisdom, carrying the divine presence in every action and thought. The return is marked by an overwhelming peace, an inner stillness that the devotee now carries in all interactions. They move through the world not with attachment, not with the ego's need for validation or success, but with an effortless flow that reflects the divine harmony of the universe. Everything they do, every action they take, is an expression of their oneness with Shiva. There is no longer any distinction between the sacred and the mundane. The entire world is sacred, for it is all an expression of Shiva's divine will. The devotee now interacts with the world in a completely different way. They see that all beings are manifestations of Shiva. Every human, every animal, every plant, every element of the earth is a reflection of the divine energy that flows through them. They no longer perceive others through the lens of separation or judgment, but as expressions of the divine. The devotee's heart is open to all beings, and their actions are rooted in compassion, love, and understanding. They are no longer bound by the limited perspective of the individual self. Instead, they experience the unity of all life, and from this deep connection, they act with profound love and humility. The devotee's service to humanity continues, but now it is no longer motivated by a sense of duty or obligation. It is an expression of divine love flowing through them, a natural outpouring of the wisdom they have received through their spiritual journey. They engage with others, not with the desire to change or fix, but with the intent to share the divine wisdom they have come to embody. In every encounter, they inspire others, not through words alone, but through their presence, through their way of being, which radiates love, peace, and the understanding that all beings are divine expressions of Shiva. In the simplest of acts, whether offering a kind word, a helping hand, or simply being present, the devotee serves as an instrument of grace in the world. They are no longer concerned with personal recognition or achievement, for they have transcended the need for external validation. Their service is selfless, born from the recognition that everything they do is a sacred offering to Shiva. Every action, no matter how small, is imbued with the divine energy of love and wisdom. The devotee understands that true spiritual fulfillment lies not in renouncing the world or retreating from it, but in living within it fully, while embodying the highest spiritual truths. They are now living proof that divinity is present in every moment, and that the highest form of spirituality is not in seeking to escape the world, but in living in perfect harmony with it. They walk through life with the same grace and peace they experienced during their union with Shiva, moving effortlessly through the world, engaged with life, but free from attachment. Their relationship with material possessions, status, and desire has radically shifted. While they still partake in the world's offerings, they do so with a deep understanding that these things are temporary, transient expressions of the divine. The devotee no longer seeks fulfillment from external sources, but finds satisfaction in the eternal, in the recognition of their true nature as Shiva's essence. The need for accumulation, status, or approval no longer holds sway over them, for they are anchored in the timeless peace of their union with the divine. In their service, the devotee encourages others to recognize their own divinity, to see beyond the illusions of the material world, and to connect with the eternal truth that lies within. They share the teachings of Shiva, not as a set of doctrines, but as a living, breathing experience, a way of being that is rooted in love, humility, and understanding. The devotee's life itself becomes a living testament to the power of the spiritual path, showing others that enlightenment is not an abstract ideal, but a way of living fully in the world while remaining connected to the divine. The devotee also continues to reflect on the nature of life's cycles, understanding that all beings, including themselves, are part of a grand cosmic dance. There is no longer any fear of death or the unknown, for they now understand that life and death are not opposites but part of the same eternal flow. Just as Shiva creates, preserves, and destroys, the devotee understands that they too participate in this cycle, both as an individual expression of the divine and as a part of the vast, ever-changing universe. There is freedom in this understanding, a freedom that comes from the acceptance of life's impermanence and the recognition that the soul is eternal. The chapter transitions smoothly into a final reflection on spiritual fulfillment. The devotee understands that true fulfillment is not a destination, but a continual unfolding of the divine presence within. The pursuit of external goals, wealth, or recognition has been replaced by the understanding that spiritual fulfillment lies in living each moment in harmony with Shiva, recognizing the divine in all things, and offering every action as an offering to the divine flow. The devotee now lives with grace and purpose, knowing that their journey, though seemingly complete, is in reality a continual unfolding of divine love, wisdom, and service. The ultimate union with Shiva is not a singular event, but an ongoing process of living fully in divine awareness. The journey of the devotee has led them to the realization that true spiritual fulfillment is found in the ever-present now, where one is at peace with themselves, with others, and with the universe, living in harmony with the divine dance of creation. The devotee's journey, having reached such a profound level of spiritual understanding, now finds their life transformed into a living testament of devotion and grace. Each action, every moment, and every word spoken is now imbued with the divine essence they have realized within themselves. It is no longer about attaining or striving, but simply being, a clear expression of Shiva's eternal grace. The devotee no longer needs to seek validation or recognition. Their life itself serves as an inspiration to others, guiding those who encounter them toward the same deep spiritual truths they themselves have realized. Their presence, now deeply rooted in love and wisdom, becomes a beacon for others on the path of awakening. As the devotee walks through the world, there is a quiet radiance that follows them. People are drawn to them, not by the teachings they speak, but by the way they live, the way they embody the divine in everything they do. In their every gesture, there is a silent invitation for others to discover the truth of their own being. They move with an effortless grace, offering help, understanding, and compassion without expectation, serving not to elevate themselves but to uplift others on their own journeys. Wherever the devotee goes, they reflect Shiva's love and wisdom. They speak not of doctrines or rules, but of truths lived through experience, truths about the nature of the soul, about the interconnectedness of all life, about the divine essence within each person. With each interaction, they inspire others to open their hearts and see that the divine is not something external or separate, but something within them, always present, waiting to be realized. The devotee has become a living example of Shiva's grace, showing others that enlightenment is not a distant goal, but a present reality, to be embraced in every moment. This embodiment of Shiva's love and wisdom creates a ripple effect, reaching far beyond the devotee's immediate presence. Those who come into contact with them find themselves gently guided toward a deeper understanding of their own true nature. In every interaction, the devotee leaves behind seeds of spiritual wisdom, which, over time, grow and blossom in the hearts of others. The work they do, whether in silence or in conversation, is never about personal gain, but about spreading the grace of Shiva, passing on the light of divine knowledge to all those ready to receive it. As the devotee reflects on their own path, they realize that the greatest gift they have to offer the world is not in seeking fame or accolades, but in being a humble servant of the divine. The purpose of their life has always been to embody the divine truth and share it through their actions and presence. They have come to understand that this is the highest form of spiritual fulfillment, living as an instrument of Shiva's love, serving humanity without expectation, and guiding others, not through forceful words, but through their own lived example. It is in the simplicity of this service that the devotee finds their deepest joy, for they know that they are fulfilling their true purpose, spreading the grace of Shiva in every corner of the world. With each person they meet, they offer a reflection of divine love. With each act of kindness, they echo the compassion that Shiva embodies. And with each moment, they bring others closer to the realization that the divine essence resides not only in them, but in all beings, all things, and all moments. This is the true legacy of a devotee, a life that becomes a living prayer, a continuous offering of grace to the world. The devotee now moves through life not as someone who is separate, but as an integral part of the divine rhythm of the universe. They are Shiva's love in action, and through them, that love spreads, touching countless lives, inspiring countless hearts, and igniting the flame of spiritual awakening in all who are ready to see it. As their journey continues, the devotee realizes that the path they have walked is not an end, but a continuation of the eternal dance of Shiva, the cosmic flow of creation and transformation. And as they step forward, ever present in the eternal now, they move not toward a goal, but toward an ever-deepening understanding of the divine in every moment. The legacy they leave is not a physical one, but a legacy of love, grace, and wisdom, passed from heart to heart, touching all those who walk the path of truth. The devotee's path, though seemingly endless, now leads them to the final stage of their journey, one where there is no more striving, no more seeking, and no more separation. Having lived a life fully immersed in the divine presence of Shiva, their soul is now ready to surrender entirely to the infinite consciousness that has always been their true essence. In this final surrender, they merge completely with Shiva, transcending all notions of self, ego, and individuality. The devotee now moves into the highest state of peace and liberation, knowing that the cycle of separation and longing has reached its completion. In the quiet of their being, the devotee feels a profound stillness, an absolute silence that is both all-encompassing and deeply intimate. It is the silence of the universe, the silence of Shiva himself. And in this moment of silence, there is no longer any distinction between the devotee and the divine. The walls of separation that once seemed so real, the barriers between the self and Shiva, between the finite and the infinite, have dissolved, leaving only unity. The devotee knows, beyond thought or feeling, that they are one with Shiva. The ego, once a defining force, is now no longer present, leaving only the pure consciousness of the divine. In this moment of ultimate surrender, there is no longer any need to hold on to anything. The devotee has let go of everything, their identity, their desires, their attachments, and has become one with the eternal infinite flow of Shiva's being. As the devotee merges with the divine essence, they experience ultimate peace, a peace that transcends all understanding, beyond the fluctuations of the mind, beyond the boundaries of the body. This is not a peace born from the absence of struggle or pain, but from the recognition of eternal truth, the truth that the self is not bound by time, space, or form. The self is Shiva, the unchanging consciousness that underlies all creation, destruction, and preservation. The devotee feels an overwhelming sense of bliss, not a fleeting emotion, but the eternal joy that arises from knowing that they have returned to the source, to the infinite wellspring of all creation. They have dissolved into the divine flow of existence, becoming one with all that is. This final surrender is not an end, but the completion of a cycle. The devotee now sees that their journey, from the moment of birth to this ultimate union with Shiva, was always a return to the source of all life, to the origin of consciousness. The world they once saw as separate and distinct now appears as a continuation of the divine dance. Life and death, creation and destruction, are not separate, but part of the same eternal process, woven together by the thread of Shiva's consciousness. The devotee realizes that this journey of separation was but a play, a cosmic drama of expansion and contraction, of coming and going. In the ultimate surrender they return to the infinite peace and wholeness that was always within them, always surrounding them, always waiting to be realized. In this moment there is a profound completion, a completion of the cycle that began with the soul's desire for union, its search for the divine. The devotee now understands that there was never any separation. They were always one with Shiva, and this entire journey was simply the unfolding of that truth. They see that in every moment of their life, every challenge, every joy, every sorrow, they were moving toward this realization of oneness. Now, at the culmination of their journey, they are no longer seeking, they are simply being, fully immersed in the eternal consciousness of Shiva. There is no longer a need to hold on to identity or form, for the devotee has become the very essence of that which they sought. The ego is no more. The self is now pure, formless awareness. In this union with Shiva, the devotee experiences the infinite, the boundless, timeless essence of existence. The cycle of birth and death, of coming and going, has no more hold, for the soul has transcended all dualities. The devotee has merged into the infinite, becoming part of the eternal consciousness that is beyond all form. As the final moments of this profound realization unfold, the devotee feels the warmth of Shiva's love, a love that is all-encompassing, infinite, and unchanging. This love does not need to be sought or found. It is always present, ever flowing, just as the essence of Shiva has always been present, ever flowing through all creation. The devotee feels the ultimate freedom, freedom from the constraints of the material world, freedom from the limitations of the body and mind, and freedom from the illusion of separation. They are free, free in the deepest sense, not because they have achieved something or attained some external goal, but because they have remembered the truth of their own being. The journey that began in search of the divine, in search of union, has now come full circle. The devotee, now fully merged with Shiva, experiences the eternal peace of the ultimate union, the realization that they were always one with the divine. As the devotee enters this final state of consciousness, they understand that this is not the end, but a return to the source, a return to the infinite well of consciousness and love that sustains all of existence. In this ultimate surrender, they have found what they were always seeking. They have become Shiva. This final chapter concludes the devotee's journey, but it is not an end, for the devotee is now one with the infinite flow of creation, continuing in the eternal dance of Shiva, a dance that never ends, a journey that is always unfolding, always beginning anew in the timeless embrace of divine unity.